I remembered to push record on the podcast known as
Trapped Under Plastic, the podcast where you celebrate miniature painting by deep-throating a Go-Gurt.
Did you bring any?
No.
You said you would, dude.
My plan was to stop on the grocery store on the way up, and then I had a meeting that was on the phone while I was driving, and I completely forgot about it. I remembered it as I was like getting onto university to get on here. I was like, no, I forgot the Go-Gurts.
Dude, it'd have been so funny if you were in like a voice chat meeting with someone and you were just like in the grocery store at like, 7:30, 8 a.m. buying Go-Gurts, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, are you like, don't ask.
Like, or did you leave your car? Are you somewhere? And you're like, yeah, hold on.
You're hearing like checkout sounds and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I just needed some Go-Gurts.
Yeah.
I'm kind of scared. I think we could do it, but I'm a little bit...
No, we're not going to do this.
I'm a little bit worried about like the gagging and then just spitting Go-Gurt all over the studio.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's not like water or something,
Yeah, well, if we like one of us does it, the other one will laugh mid Go-Gurt gargle, and then they would also do it.
Dude, I'd rather do smelling salts 10 times than deep throat a Go-Gurt, like literally.
I don't know, the fresh smelling salts were so bad.
They were.
It hurt my brain.
Can we discuss the logistics of what deep throating a Go-Gurt actually is? Are you like putting the wrapper down your throat?
No, I don't think so. I think you got to get it down far enough past your tongue a little bit, so like you get a direct shot. Otherwise, you're just filling your mouth up, and you can't do it in one fell swoop. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need it down there, and then you gotta put your two fingers together at the top, and then you pull it straight down, and all the Go-Gurt slides in. I don't know how to open my throat though. I feel like that's a key part of this.
It is, yeah. Or you could do the teeth clamp, instead of the finger clamp. Kind of one of these.
Oh yeah,
it's like.
But then it's like into your heart.
Yeah. I want Go-Gurt straight into the heart, dude.
It's like all the way down your windpipe.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know the song, or I don't even know what the name of the song is, but the lyric goes "shot through the heart."
Yeah.
What if it's "Gurt to the heart"? I don't fucking know.
This is where we do the Bon Jovi remix. It's in parentheses. It says "go," but then it just says "Gurt to the heart."
Yeah.
And you're to blame.
Mm-hmm. All right, Preamble Ramble time. I want to share a positive 3D printing story. I feel like me.
This is like the world first.
I know. I feel like me especially. I always struggle with 3D printing. I'm working on my base for my Razorwing jet fighter, and Epic Basing sent me some awesome succulents and agaves and barrel cacti and like all this stuff to use to put on my little desert base. And so I 3D printed them out yesterday, and I didn't have a lot of time. It was like at the end of the day at like 3 p.m. And I don't know. My setup isn't like super figured out, and like I 3D print like once every 4 months, and so I don't really know what I'm doing. And so I just decided to use the standard resin, use the pre-supported files that like already work in Chi2Box, use the default profile that like gets imported when you pick the particular printer that I have in Chi2Box, and I just fucking sent it. I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't use any profile that I made or a community profile. I used the standard Elegoo resin, which matches the printer, and it just worked.
Dude,
it just worked. All of it worked.
A beauty.
50 micron layer to nothing too insane, and they look beautiful. They look beautiful.
I think there is something to be said. I think there's two factors here. If I'm going to talk out of my ass about why this worked. First one is actually maybe three. One of them is like the Chi2Box printer settings. I've found if they have my exact printer, it just feels like it's more likely to be pretty close right off the get-go instead of like just going from fucking scratch. Mm-hmm. Number two, using their resin with their printer. It's like you just put a random amalgamation of resins together, your own mix and stuff. It's like you kind of get that dialed in, but it's like their printer plus their resin, it should work, right? And then the last factor is, and this is the same results I've had, is Epic Basing knows how to do their shit where it just prints. I don't know what it is because I've printed enough stuff under the exact same settings, same resin, same printer, same Chi2Box software, and some companies will just work without a hitch, and some of them it's a fucking coin flip.
Okay.
And I just don't know. It's not just the. I mean, it is the supports is something, but that's not all of it either. I feel like there's some other fucking they sprinkle some magic dust over the STL files before they email them to you or some shit. I've never had an issue with even their big shit, like their big trees and cool stuff. It always fucking prints.
That's awesome. I had one small thing that I did fix. One of the pre-Chitu boxed supported files that I had dropped on had like when it fell onto the build plate, it like was touching the build plate in the tiniest little spot, and I just felt like that would totally detach as it, from the pulling forces of the build plate as it kind of pulled out, and so I just dropped it down like a 0.5 millimeter, and so there was more contact surface area, and none of the other ones had that issue. They were already all ready to go, and I said that, and then it all worked. I don't know if it wouldn't have worked if I didn't do that, but that was like literally the only manual thing that I did. And everything worked, and it was amazing.
Man, if you get those small victories, you share with the community to let everyone know it is possible.
It is possible. Even someone like me, a pedantic asshole, can make it work. That doesn't like turn off the thing in my brain where I'm like, I want to squeeze every ounce of performance out of the thing that I possibly can, but also the energy isn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to set and forget it.
Yeah.
So I went on a little vacationes. I went down to
Nice.
Florida with the fam.
Okay.
And first vacation I've taken in quite a while.
So you didn't go to Universal Studios in California. You went to
Florida. Yeah, we went to Universal Studios in Florida.
Oh my God, dude, I cannot keep track of this shit.
The problem is there's a Disney World in Florida and a Disneyland in California and a Universal Studios in Florida and Universal Studios in California. So it's easy to get confused.
Okay.
The superior, I don't know about the Disneys, but the superior Universal is in Florida.
Okay.
Especially from the Harry Potter perspective.
Okay.
So we had that, but there's some things that I want to talk about the vacation that are most important. First one, I want to rant about food.
Like the cost of food?
Oh, dude, Jesus Christ. The cost of food is goddamn ridiculous. And I'm not just talking at theme parks. I'm talking about the city of Orlando it's not even the city of Orlando, but like the theme park area. You can't go anywhere. Like, you can't escape it. We went to a fucking Walgreens, and it was $4 for 3 bananas.
Okay.
It was like they just fucking got you. You're in their bubble, and nowhere is safe.
Yeah, the area of effect.
Yeah, so what that leads me to believe is that you can be a shitty restaurant and thrive because all of your customers are single-serving customers.
Yeah, they're captive, yeah.
Yeah, you don't, well, it's not even, yes, you're captive, but also you're not reliant on local business to stay in business. So your food can suck, and yes, there can be negative reviews or ho-hum reviews online, but by and large, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to be great.
Yeah.
You just have to be better than the rest of the shit or about the same as the rest of the shit. So most food was garbage and so expensive, and I wanted to rant on that. I will give props to 2 places that I went to. We went to Disney's Animal Kingdom, and we went to a sit-down restaurant there. It was just kind of like we were so hot out, and it was going around doing all sorts of stuff. So we're just like, oh, there's a restaurant around lunchtime. We'll go there. It's called the Yak and Yeti, and it was really fucking good. It was like Eastern food. It had a bunch of different stuff. It had some Vietnamese, some Korean, some Chinese.
Okay.
And it was solid. And it was like, it wasn't amazing, but it was better than what I would expect from a Disney restaurant. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is at Universal Studios, they have this giant place. It's a giant like chocolate place. It's called like the Chocolate Emporium. And it's a big, huge like steampunk castle thing. And it looks like something out of Willy Wonka. And so we go in there and we're like, oh, we're just going to see what kind of chocolate stuff they have and desserts and stuff. And they had a whole fucking restaurant in there. And the restaurant was fucking primo. We went back there a second night because it was so good the first night. Okay. It had like a braised short rib over cheesy grits and like glazed carrots and stuff.
Nice.
And it wasn't more expensive. That meal was like $25 for me, which is like at a good restaurant anywhere you would be like, I'm cool.
For dinner?
I'm cool with paying, between $20 and $30 a plate if the food's good.
Yeah.
I had a steak the second night because I'm like, I don't need some meat. And the steak was solid. It was okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth the $30 that it was, but it was still solid. It was better than other food there. So let's talk about food. And the other thing that I realized when I go on vacation or when I go into a foreign land, which is pretty much anywhere outside the Midwest,
foreign land,
the thing that I find most intriguing that really interests me in this really weird way, and I spend a lot of time focusing on, is looking at the plants and animals. Not at like a zoo, not at like the theme park. I'm just like, I found myself just like looking at all the different shrubs and bushes in Florida.
You like the local flora and fauna?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it reminded me, it's like, I did the same fucking thing when we went to England. I went
What? You're looking at the weeds and shit?
Yeah, I did the same thing when we were in D.C.
Okay.
I did the same thing when we were in Seattle. I'm like, I'm just so interested in the trees and shrubs.
Okay.
And the small wildlife. I spent so much time trying to catch lizards in Florida.
Okay. Yeah.
So I caught a little anole. My daughter and I went go hunting for those. I caught those. They're just like little lizards. We don't have little lizards around here. They die. It's fucking negative 40,000 degrees in the winter. Yeah. They're dead. So I caught a little lizard, and then I caught a little skink in Disney. That was pretty exciting too.
You're just catching them with your bare hands?
Yeah. They're just little lizards. What if they, if they bite you, they just have these little baby teeth. They're not going to hurt, So I caught a little lizard, and then I let him go.
Okay.
So I just was like, I like catching the stuff. I like seeing the weird little different birds they have. I learned that about myself.
I was in Arizona recently, and I saw a lot of lizards like running around, and I also saw I don't know why they were there, but there was 2 bearded dragons, and they were running around. We went to like a cactus preservation area, and there was like someone trying to interact with them, and they started doing like this push-up thing.
Yeah,
they were like pumping, and I like looked it up later, and that's like kind of like how they ward off like enemies, or how they like signal that they're becoming upset or frustrated. But yeah, he was like doing like little push-ups.
I think he's trying to make them look like ripped and big.
Yeah.
You don't want none of this.
It's getting that swole on. Yeah. So how do you know that you liked those other 2 restaurants? What if it was just everything was so shitty that they felt better?
Yeah, that's certainly a factor. Yeah, certainly a factor. It was not garbage food.
Yeah.
Compared to all the other garbage food.
How was the theme park element of it though? How are the attractions? Was that fun? Did everyone in the fam like it?
Yeah. It was the first time I really got my daughter to do rides. So she did a couple of rides, and convinced her to do the newest Harry Potter ride at the end of the day after she was kind of built up some momentum. We didn't do like big roller coasters or anything, but she was like, yep, I want to do that one now. I want to do that one. And we decided, it was like on the way to walk to it, that we went to the Spider-Man one. I had like a 5-minute wait. Like, let's do the Spider-Man one. It's like a 4D one. You're in like this like car kind of thing, and then the car moves around and all sorts of shit. I remember that ride. And I was a senior in high school. We went to Florida for my senior class trip, and that ride was brand new. So this is 24 years ago. That thing was a fucking hot mess. You guaranteed got micro concussions in that fucking thing.
Oh no!
And I love like loud movies and loud music and shit. It was so loud, it like hurt.
Oh my gosh!
It was terrible, and that immediately scarred my daughter.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Yeah,
and then we didn't get to go to the new Harry Potter ride that my wife and I hadn't been on before.
Damn,
because of that. And I was like, I fucking hate Spider-Man.
Now you just have like some hatred for all Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, and
that is so sad.
And like the 3D aspect, because you had the glasses, is so old and bad. It gives you a headache. Like it makes your eyes strain the whole time. So you're kind of like squinting, hurting. It's like every part of the experience was just mildly painful. It was like, nope, damn it. God damn it. Should have just passed that by. You know, sometimes you just got to go for the thing that you value instead of the things that seem like a good value.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
How was being separate from work?
It was really nice. I didn't think about it.
Good. Like even toward the tail end of the trip.
Yeah.
Your spidey senses didn't start to tingle, or you didn't feel like guilty or anything like that.
Well, I set myself up a little bit where I got all the painting done for the following video before I left, and that was the big Brom Frankenstein monster thing. Mm-hmm. I did all that, and then when I came back, I did have one less day to do all of the editing, everything from start to finish, and that I was really thinking I wasn't gonna get it done on time. But then I also told myself, like on the plane ride back, I'm like, if the video comes out on the Saturday instead of Friday, it's fine. Everything is fine. It's great. I ended up getting it all done on time when I got back, but I'm me stressing about it is not going to change the reality of the thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've done enough videos at this point where I know how it works. I know when I sit down, I get to work. I know I'm going to have maybe a couple longer work days to get it done, but it'll get done. And so there was some times where it was like worried in the back of my mind, but by and large, it was like, while we were there, I was like, I'm not gonna even think about it. And
Wonderful.
I read my Dragonlance books, and I brought my Switch along to play a new Switch game I got.
A little bit start with a D and with a Diablo.
No. That's a different thing. But
okay.
I never turned on the Switch once. I never did. I'm kind of weird about video games where it's just like I need to feel like I don't need a long time to sit and play, but it's like if I feel there's a chance like we're gonna get up and we're gonna go somewhere and maybe in a minute, maybe in an hour, and I don't know, I don't want to like commit to something.
Yeah. I was never a kid that like had like a handheld console or like anything portable. So like the idea of like gaming on the go, I don't know, it's just not super like attractive to me. Like I love sitting in a dungeon, sitting in a computer room with the lights off, you know, like in a hoodie and sweatpants playing games. I don't like want to do it like, you know, on a I mean, it's probably fine, but that's just kind of how I think about it immediately.
Yeah. My bigger reason for bringing it was in case we didn't get the TV screen airplanes with Delta,
Yes.
but we did. So then I watched movies. I can't remember what I watched.
Yes, this is very important.
I watched Beekeeper.
Oh, the new Jason Statham.
Jason Statham movie.
Yeah.
It's incredibly mid.
Okay.
It's exactly what I what I had expected.
Jason Statham action movie.
Yeah, it's exactly what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And then I watched Parasite.
You watched Parasite. Okay, cool. Okay.
The Korean movie.
Yeah, the one Best Picture like 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I was like, I've never seen this. I want to sit and watch it.
Yeah. That's such a fucking swing, dude.
It's so-
Beekeeper to Parasite.
Yeah, dude. It was so goddamn weird. That
Yeah, it's
movie's
weird.
So weird. It
Yeah.
was good, but it was weird. I was
Were you freaking out when they found out people were like living under the house?
Yeah.
That's like, what the fuck? Like, this is now suddenly a horror movie or something.
I know. It's like, and it just keeps going further down that rabbit hole, and you're like, I'm getting a little clammy here watching this.
Yeah.
It's sweaty.
It's weird.
I kind of thought it was a movie about like an outbreak of Ebola or some shit.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
know what it was about.
Yeah.
So I was just like,
It's a good movie. I enjoyed it. I've only seen it one time though. I definitely watch it again.
Yeah, it was worth it. So that's what I watched.
Okay. All right. Next up on the Preamble Ramble, I did another weekend away with some friends at a cabin. We have 2 other couples that me and my wife go to a cabin with every single year in the summer. And part of that trip is a lot of board games. And let me tell you, the vacation started out bad for Scott Walter. I was losing everything. Everything I was playing, I was getting dominated. Actually, one friend was winning every single game we were playing.
That's not cool.
He played Dice Throne, we played Flesh and Blood, we played all these other board games, and he was just owning. But then we busted out Dune Imperium, and I finally fucking won a game of Dune Imperium, which that game is awesome, and I love it so much, even though I've like lost like all 10 games I played or whatever. But I finally clinched that W, and then we also played this not old, but kind of old CMON game called Blood Rage, the Viking one. I remember saying and thinking that was my favorite CMON game, and I think it still is, but I think it's definitely kind of broken because I also ended up winning that one, and I had like 196 points compared to like my friends like 50 and 75. Oof. So I found something that maybe shouldn't exist in the game, and it felt a little bad to abuse. But yeah, it felt good to finally win Dune Imperium, which is like more of a balanced and kind of streamlined experience. So yeah, that was good.
In my head, because I've never played Dune Imperium, but I'm aware of its existence. In my head, it's a game like Risk where it takes like 18 hours to play a game. Is it long? Is it long? It feels like a long game.
So yeah, it's like a mid-complexity Euro-style game. You ever heard of Euros?
Yeah, it's what
like worker placement. Like there's political stuff. There's combat. There's like a lot of elements. There's no input randomness. Where there's no like dice rolling. There's no like all of the randomness is like what your opponents are going to do on their turn. Like what cards are going to reveal that you can buy. Stuff like that. It's they take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, like somewhere in there, depending on like how familiar you are with the game and how many players there are.
That's manageable.
Oh, it totally is. Yeah.
Shorter than a game of Warhammer. So
oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's a fucking awesome game. I haven't played with any of the expansions yet, but I know that they're really good. I want to try them out.
Are you gonna pick them up?
I have a friend who has all of them, so I think I might just buy.
Oh yeah,
those.
that's it. You just piggyback on that.
Yeah. I have the base game. He has the expansions. So
nice.
Yeah, it's a good combo.
Nice. I got the last couple things here. First, I'm once again a tadpole dad. I'm a proud father. little baby amphibians.
Okay.
We got a lot of rain so far this spring, and
Yeah, a lot.
And that means that the pond way up in the woods behind where I live is full. And my daughter and I went as soon as she was done with school. We went and checked for tadpoles, and we got some tadpoles, and they're the cute little. They turn into the cute little bright green tree frogs. So we raise them all summer, and then we have our little tree frogs that live on like the suction cup on your windows at night, and they eat the bugs. So I guess that just goes back to I just like little critters.
Yeah.
Apparently. So
That's cool.
in fact, this weekend there's a reptile show in La Crosse, which isn't very far from where we live. So I think my daughter and I might go down to the reptile show, which is kind of scary because then I might come home with the critter, and my wife will be not very happy.
Or a large snake or something like that.
Yeah, dude, I've had snakes before. They live so goddamn long. I don't know if I want one. And then the last thing I wrote down here is just D4, which stands for Diablo 4. I decided I want to get back into a little video gaming here and there.
Diablo 4, I think, is a good game for a little bit of video gaming here and there.
It is. So I'm like hopped in. The new season 4 has not been out for too long. I have a buddy that plays it, so he kind of brought me up to speed a little bit. Hopped down, made a necromancer. Haven't played a necromancer before in Diablo 4, but that's a bit of my jam. And man, I love just having a sea of fucking skeletons following me around doing all the hard work.
Dude, I think I should give Diablo 3 another chance, but like just solo player. I was playing it co-op, and I don't know, maybe it was just too easy because it was co-op, but I think I just need to be in the right headspace. I'm just going to sit down, I'm just going to fucking smash buttons, I'm going to kill hordes of dudes, and it's going to be a chill thing, right? That's what it is, right?
If you want it to... So there's two different difficulties when you start. So you can start like difficulty 1 or difficulty 2. Difficulty 2, the game is just a bit harder, but also you get more gold and more item drops because you're playing on hard difficulty. And so that's the one I chose, and it's not incredibly difficult.
Do the monsters just have more HP, right? They don't like...
They hit harder.
They hit harder? Okay, sure.
Yeah, and then their stuff is like you need higher resistances for them to prevent them from going through for full damage. You need higher armor, that kind of stuff. But what you really should do if you want to still just like enjoy the game as it is, but have that level of like fear, is you need to play hardcore mode. Okay. Which is if you die, your fucking character's deleted.
Yeah. No, I can't fucking do that.
Dude,
shit,
that's the way to go.
I tried that in fucking Doom, and I like made it to the 3rd level as my furthest thing, and then died, and I was like, fuck this shit, dude. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah. I think maybe it's hardcore seems to be in these kinds of games where it's like you really love the game, you're an enjoyer of the game, you're aficionado of the game,
right,
and you want to get, squeeze the extra bit out. It's just that level. Because I played when they came out with the classic WoW hardcore, I played that, and it's fucking fun. The fear of like, you just can't just like go willy-nilly.
Nowhere is safe.
Nowhere is safe. And every time I died, I think I killed 4 characters. Every time I died, it was my own fucking mistake. It wasn't something...
What level?
I think the highest level hunter I got was like 34.
Okay.
Like I wasn't low level.
It's PvP world, right? Because it's hardcore?
Yeah. No, I was PvE.
Oh, okay. What are you dying of? Like the monsters and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I just got a little bit more too big for my britches and what I want to pull and how much mana I have and my health and respawns will get you too.
Yeah.
Like
mob respawns. Okay, yeah.
Mob respawns are usually what gets you, or getting something tagged. Like oftentimes there's a spot where I'd accidentally tag the named, and that fucking named would root me, and I'm like, fuck me.
Now I'm dead. Yeah. Feign death quick. Oh no, you can't do that.
Most of my hunters died before I got feign death. You get feign death at like 28 or some shit. I think.
Okay, yeah.
But when I died at 34, it was like the feign death failed. And I'm like,
I love how that's just like knowledge you have stored in the back of your head. I get feigned death at 28. You're like, you play WoW like whatever.
Yeah. I didn't play WoW 20 years ago.
That's hilarious. I love how you can just remember stuff like that. That's awesome. The last thing I have here on the old Preamble Ramble is I've found some more time in my personal life to like kind of do some more nerdy shit. And so I've been able to get back on the bike here of the Star Wars RPG group, like the actual like full version of the game that we were playing after we did that demo thing. And I've been like watching and listening to some Star Wars RPG content just to like, because I've never DM'd before and I've never played this game before. And it's like, I want to just like hear some advice from some more experienced players. And one thing that stuck with me that I really like the idea of is that the DM should spend time to have individual sessions with each player character to help them make their character, which is definitely a huge expenditure of time. I think whenever I've done it in the past, and you probably have a similar experience to this, you just session 0 is you all sit down together and make a character, right?
Yeah.
And so in this case, that's not happening, but I'm able to really intimately understand everyone's character, and like, because they all have like backstories they're fucking developing, and like things that are like unique about them from like what their race is. Like Dan's playing a Chiss, which is like the same race as Admiral Thrawn, the blue guy. And he has like unique things about him that are different from like the normal Chiss race. And so it's nice to be able to have like a little journal with like, you know, everyone's name, what they are, and a little bio that describes things that are unique about them and things to remember. It's just like a little half-page thing, but I can do that because I'm spending time with each person, and it's fun to do that. Honestly, I like doing that.
I find that as a DM, GM, whatever you want to call it, that those experiences are more valuable to you as running the game as they are for the player. It helps the player kind of talk through and kind of reinforce, so they get a really clear understanding. So hopefully they can better put themselves in that character's shoes in scenes in the world.
That's a good point, actually.
But to me, it's like now I get it by doing it one-on-one, especially. We get to really like I get to sink in who your character is, jot down a couple notes, but those notes are mostly just kind of memory joggers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it allows me in the midst of a session to be able to pull on those things and just sprinkle in some interesting things, some situations that are kind of setting up that character or an NPC they're going to interact with, or, you know, some kind of lore in the world that you have some understanding now, rather than them just coming to the session, even session 0, when you have everyone around the table kind of explaining and you walking through and stuff. I find I don't get as much of a really deep understanding, and I don't feel as like I can ask a lot of, you know, in-depth questions, and like, why do they do that? Or even be like, well, asking probing questions for them to maybe add some more depth too.
Exactly.
But it's also the tricky thing too, is like, you probably have guys in your group that are like this. I've played with people that are like this, where it's like you made too much.
Yes.
You made them too deep. You made it too complex. And what happens is you have analysis paralysis, and you can't actually play them because they're too multifaceted.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's just like part of their race or heritage, and their like occupation, maybe how they grew up. That should summarize most of it, and then maybe one interesting quirk, because especially in like something like the Star Wars universe, there's so much depth and uniqueness just on the wide variety of alien races you can play.
Mm-hmm.
You saying all the blue guys, and this is not to poop on Dan, this is just an example.
Pooping on you, Dan.
Dan, all the blue people are like this, but my blue guy
is special.
He's not like that. He's like 48 degrees to the left of that. And what that is like, no. All of the other players in the group, and, you know, wide variety of people that interact in the universe, they don't know enough about blue guys. It's not that they all grew up with the next door neighbor and the whole half of your elementary school were all blue guys, so they have an intimate knowledge of what blue guys are like to know that you're different than other blue guys. The rest of your group is going to assume all blue guys are this weird, quirky version of blue guy that you are. And that's not right either, because now they don't appreciate the quirkiness. It's just like...
Yeah. I totally understand that, and like it's so interesting to watch people make characters. It seems so similar to painting an army or painting a warband for your game. Like you feel like, oh, this is the campaign I'm gonna play for fucking 10 years,
yes.
And so this needs to be the perfect character. And it's like, no, it can be just like a little weird thing that we play 8 sessions of, and then we move on, and you make a new character. It's like you can try new things out. It doesn't need to be so important. But also, Dan is also the kind of person, I think a lot of people are like this, where it's like he will look through the species list and they'll pick something that he thinks just looks cool, and then he'll read the backstory and he'll be like, you know what, I actually don't like this. So he found this cool cyborg person, and then found out that they were like ape people, and that they were like marauders, and that they would like they were just a totally mercenary faction, very violent, not nice at all. And he's like, well, maybe I'll just take the picture and like totally recreate the backstory. And I was like, oh god, like this is getting real hairy real quick.
It's getting real.
But then he didn't do that. But like I don't think Dan's alone in that. That's also what I would do. I'd pick the thing that I think would look the coolest, and then try to like work within the confines of what the lore is. But that's kind of hard to do if you like don't want to be like a marauder or whatever.
Yeah, I'm the same way in dealing with folks in my group, where it's like, oftentimes the questions, I'll repeat the same question to them as we're going through this and making their character. And even like between sessions that you get through where there's you've done a session or two, and I'll oftentimes do this with just personal one-on-one text. And I'll be like, I want you to focus on the aspects of your character that are easiest for you to show at the table, because the background of your character doesn't matter if it doesn't get played out at the table. It's non-existent. Because if it's only in some part of that can be just like, I just get enjoyment and I have fun knowing that there's all this depth to it. And that's great. And you can still do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you need to pick out one or two things that kind of are the epitome or define your character that can be shown at the table, because that is really how the story is told. That's how the background and the future of your character is developed, is how they're interacting. And if it's this convoluted, mess, a bag of cats that is so complex that like you're not going to just do this giant fucking speech to every NPC you walk through explaining who you are.
I am Lord Thracic of the 10th dynasty. Yeah, no, you can't just do that.
Unless you play a character that is so obtuse and is a diplomat or whatever, and that's how he interacts with the world.
That's their shtick,
That's their shtick. But then also the 10th time that happens around the table, the rest of your players will be like, fuck.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is that everyone wants to fucking be a beater. Like they want to murder everyone, right? It's a fucking video game, right? And I'm reading through the first mission of the first scenario we're gonna do, and like violence is not gonna be a solution that they can employ in like this particular scenario. So I'm like really looking forward to seeing how they navigate that, and like, are they just gonna like murder the first person that is like the slightest bit of a criminal, wrongdoer, die, so we'll see how that happens. So that's good advice though. I like that. Like focus on the 2 to 3 things that you can actually role play, and then the rest of it can be just flavor for whatever character.
And then if you as a DM understand there are things and you're like, oh, that's really kind of cool that that's a part of like your upbringing and blah blah blah, you can later on kind of put them in a situation where that could come to the surface. But so often you don't want to put yourself in the shoes as the dungeon master of being in charge of everyone's character.
Yeah.
They have to be proactive in that. And then if they're doing that, it takes the pressure off you and allows you some breathing room to put in one of those things maybe every other session. Or I like to do, it's like every session I'm going to try to do one character has this kind of unique moment. So every session is going to kind of alternate. And in this unique situation that maybe their skill set, maybe the build that they did, maybe their background is allowed to show, kind of come to the forefront, that they're really valuable to the party by them being there and their skill set or their background or their experience or, anything like that. So that's a little thing that can often help it. But yeah, it's a whole fucking deep dive to get into that world of RPG stuff. But
I'm looking forward to it. I'm having a lot of fun. Something in my brain really just clicked with like what an RPG is to me and like what I get out of it, and I'm looking forward to it a lot.
My last bit of advice from my experience,
please,
just assume they're always going to be murder hobos.
I know. Yeah. Okay. That's a phrase I've heard before now a couple times. Murder hobos.
Murder hobos.
Is that a D&D thing?
But it's also it's any RPG.
Okay.
When you don't have the restraints of real world repercussions,
I know, right?
We're all fucking animals. We just want to kill. And so what I like to do is when I go into a session, I'm planning ahead and thinking about knowing where they're going to go or thinking the couple places they go. I'm reading the book. I'm jotting down my own notes. I always assume worst case scenario, because then they're always going to surprise you if you do worst case scenario, and then you get to have fun because you're like, oh fuck, I didn't know this ride was going to go this way. Let's go with it. But if you assume that, then you can set into place some in-game repercussions. Well, what would happen in this world if they did kill this dude that was pickpocketing or whatever? Like, how's the world going to react to that? And so then you're starting for them to feel that their decision-making should require a little bit more thought. And for instance, we just had this in my last D&D session. One of the players died, like dead. And It was a series of 3 decision-making steps that led to his death. And at every one of the steps, the entire party or the person, some of them were his decision-making and some of them were his friend's decision-making, they all chose the result that they were made aware that there were some negative repercussions should he do this. And they all chose violence, and they led to his death. The pinnacle of which is he's lying on the ground bleeding out for his own fault. And the fight had gone the way of the party. And the mage, kobold leader mage, and his head bodyguard were basically, they're the last 2 remaining of this entire warren filled with kobolds. They had slaughtered them all. And he was like, the leader came to the realization that he's not going to get out of this alive just by fighting his way out. Blair had gone up and just fallen dead, unconscious, but not dead, okay, in between the leader kobold and his bodyguard. They realized they need to talk their way out of this. They said, look, we want to get out of this alive. We don't want to die.
Post-genocide.
Yeah.
Post-kobold genocide?
Yeah. Time out, guys.
Actually.
Time out.
Can we forgive all this?
They both hold their weapons at the unconscious body of Blair. And they say, look, we just let us back out of this. We do not want any more problems, blah, blah, blah. Now, their friend Tony walks up. He hears this, and they did what's called then a ready to action. So they hold their weapons at the ready. If something shady happens, they get to swing first. And Tony decided he didn't care what they wanted. He swings his giant 2-handed sword at them. Well, their attacks go off first. If you're unconscious, if they roll a hit, it's an automatic crit. A hit on someone that's unconscious gives you like 1 death fail. If you get 4 death fails, you're dead.
Okay, so there's death fails and death saves, right?
Yeah, death save is how you like prevent yourself from getting closer to death.
Yeah.
But if you basically take damage while you're unconscious, it counts as an automatic death save. You get 4 of those, you're dead. So if you get hit once, you lose 1. If you get crit, you lose 2. But since he's unconscious, any hit automatically turns into a crit. Because there's 2 guys there, that's 4. He dead.
So your players killed your other player?
He chose to kill him. He could have given him a health potion. He could have said, okay, no. Okay, we get it. We let them back off. Let them get away. You could have even tried to catch up to him later.
Why are they conflicting?
With the kobolds?
No.
Or just like...
Why is one of your other player characters threatening your other player?
He's not threatening him. He's thinking that his thought process was like, well, even if they try to do something, I'll still murder them, then we'll save him. That's my thought of what he was thinking. But it was so try to make it very clear that there's very serious repercussions, and understanding the rules of the game of how easy it is to kill somebody. If you just stab a person that's lying there bleeding out, they die pretty quick.
Yeah, but like why would that ever be a thing that you would want to pretend like you were going to do, like kill another player?
Well, he wasn't killing them.
It sounds like they were responsible for it.
Well, the kobolds were bad guys.
Yes.
The friend, Tony, that walked up with his 2-handed sword, they basically said, let us go or we'll kill your friend. He chose, instead of letting them go, he chose to swing at them and try to kill the kobolds.
Okay.
He tried to kill the kobolds, but they had their attacks readied. As soon as he declares his swing, they swing first.
Okay, and they had their swords ready to harm the downed player.
Yeah, it's kind of like, in any action movie where you've got the hostage, you have the gun to their head and be like, let me out of here, or the hostage gets it.
For some reason, I thought one of your players was holding the unconscious player hostage against the kobolds. And I was like, why do they care?
He was thinking he could lop off their heads. And also, he is a giant, very, very scary Shadow Knight. He did immediately lop off their heads.
Yeah.
So he achieved his task.
But just not fast enough.
Just not fast enough. So it's like,
dude, was that guy super bad?
I had to pull shit out of my ass to basically give them this weird situation where they can bring him back at great detriment to themselves. Basically, now they're cursed under this great devil demon that at some point is going to, and they have to complete this quest before nightfall. Otherwise, the resurrection won't take hold and they'll be dead forever. And so they're in the midst of this.
Okay.
And again, where we left off last session, they are making very questionable decisions on if they're going to make it back in time.
Oh, no, dude.
And I'm like, dude, y'all.
Rip Blair, dude.
He's going to be on their fucking horses riding back quickly to the fucking kobold cave, and he's just gonna fall off his horse dead.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna feel bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You did this to yourself.
Right?
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that's our fucking preamble ramble of Dungeons and Dragons.
That was a good old long preamble ramble. Let's get into the what we painted. I painted this vampire lady in an hour and a half from Black Primer. And there, I didn't like pause the timer when I was like cleaning the airbrush or whatever. I just put the timer on and I painted the model. And then when it beeped, I was done.
She's such a good model.
I know. Yeah. So this was part of like a speed painting battle that me and Vince both did. And he has his over in the office and this one's mine. Very curiously, we painted it almost in the exact same scheme. We grabbed totally different paints, different ranges. And then somehow we both ended in like almost the exact same place. It was very bizarre.
And having looked at the pictures of both of them, I think I would have a quicker ability in person. But it took me a while to figure out which was yours and which was Vince's.
I know. Yeah. It's weird. Yeah. You can definitely tell. Like, I painted it, so I'm gonna have a little bit more intimate knowledge. But it's just really weird. They're both similar colors, similar layout of colors and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always so encouraging to do this kind of exercise for me because it's like, dude, I could have an Underworld warband done in a reasonable time. Like that isn't amazing. The back of the model is pretty lacking, but like who the fuck cares? Like I could spend 15 more minutes, do some hair highlights, paint the base, and that would be done and it'd be totally fine.
Yeah. It's like you understand how much you need to pare down things to what really matters.
Yeah, it like really puts things into perspective when you like have an hour or an hour and a half to paint a fig.
And you really kind of realize where you're fiddling with shit and where you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's great. And like you really tight in the amount of colors you used. And you realize how often, at least when I do this kind of a thing, I realize how often I add so many extra colors that don't add anything.
Yeah.
All this nice like dark burnt red that's, in a lot of different places. I'm like, yeah, that little strap, that doesn't need to be a different color. That little thing, that doesn't need to be a different color. Like they all read as a darker, warm neutral.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's great. It works good. Yeah. I think it looks really good. It's just really good for an hour and a half, especially like the armor. Like,
especially from Black Primer. Like Vince decided that. I was going to zenithal like undercoat it to give, a little bit more opacity or like a little bit easier time to paint with lighter colors. Like the skin, for instance, like that kind of like that lilac purple skin. But he was like, no, we're doing black. And I was like, all right, fuck it. Let's go.
Yeah, you do take more time to work up that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you got to start darker. You got to work it up. I don't think I've ever done that before, like a Black Prime hour and a half speed paint. But it worked. It was fine.
I think it looks great.
Thank you, sir.
Good choice. That kind of goes a little bit into mine because the thing that I painted for this week's video was a similar kind of this is about an hour and a half as well from priming. So I did zenithal and then I had a blue ink from below. And then it was just like trying to do the basics of like grimdark. Like what are the basic techniques and how can you use, it's kind of like layering with weathering and with grime instead of with acrylic paint and using that to help define the shapes. And a big key thing for that I realized is like you got to start pretty light because the more you even go to like a mid-tone, the more you lose all the interesting color depth, the texture depth, the build-up, all that nuance, you lose it in a darker color. It can still be there and it still has some value, but it creates the most drama off of a lighter beginning. And then you can do things like there's some points in there where there's like a blue-green, almost turquoise, dark turquoise dark turquoise enamel that thinned almost gives me like a tint over some areas of the armor that's almost a little bit more blue-green, a little bit color depth and stuff. That was just fun and I just could slap that on later. But you wouldn't see that if you were doing with a true ultramarine blue. So I painted him as an ultramarine, but an ultramarine in a desaturated world.
In a desaturated world.
In a world where color is king. You're poor. Yeah, and then it helps like the red from the eye lenses really punch.
I know, dude. There's something so sexy about a pale paint job and just like bright red eyes.
Yeah.
It sends such a grimdark vibe for me. I don't know why it does, but yeah, it works.
But it was super fun, and it's not about precision and skill. It's almost like like a tradesman kind of mindset where you understand your tools and you understand the techniques of using those, like how you can best utilize a skill saw for a certain thing, and then just using them. It's not about precision edge highlights. It's not about, being the most realistic smooth painter. It's about just using a couple fun techniques. Once you get the hang of them, you can knock out stuff pretty quick and create a dramatic impact. So I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. There is some artistry here in that it's like you've ever seen like a face drawn with minimal lines.
Yeah.
You're doing that here with edge highlights, spotty edge highlights, like a knee pad, a foot, an armor panel, his pauldron, his forearm. Like they have these little bright spots, and this very subtly sends like this message of like all these various body parts and stuff. So it's like in this grim, dark world, there's still some construction like going on to help the viewer piece it together, which those are the kind of things I think just come second nature to someone who's been painting for a long time.
Yeah. You got to define the shapes.
Yeah. So it's grim, dark, but also there's still some good like accuracy here. Did you at any point like highlight with a sponge? Like,
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep, that
I haven't
was
seen the video yet.
The final step after the enamels is the highlighting, and it was a sponging over the armor, and then just a little bit of scratchy edge highlights.
That works so well.
Yeah,
Awesome.
It really because it builds on the texture and uses the light. It's like, well, everything is kind of modeled and texturized. The highlights should be the same.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
And so this is not the first time you've painted a grim dark thing, is it?
It's the first time in a long time that I think back when my channel was new, I used them more often, and I used them a little bit more
Like streaking grime?
Streaking grime with a heavy hand, right? It was just like slop it on, buff it all off. But this was a lot of realizing the thinning and then the creating of streaks with a dry, clean brush. You'd place this stuff, and then you just kind of like flop it around, and it creates a natural streak and flow and hazing into the other materials. So it's not so ones and zeros. It's either grimy or it's removed, and it looks, too separated. This I wanted to go for something that felt a little bit more natural. And then it's like, oh my gosh, all the edge highlight, all the panel lining is done with this, and all that like time-intensive work doesn't need to be done.
Yeah, I feel that. We had Vince visit us last time, and you guys both gave me some feedback on Vader, and so I painted Vader. And I knew what Vince was saying was right. I just didn't think I could do it. I thought that the pink would just overcome the red to the point where it would look bad. But you don't need a lot. You need the smallest amount of pink into white, and it changes it, like everything. Like it makes it look more metallic. It's so weird. So like
it still reads as red.
Yeah. And so like I went in with a very surgical like hand and was like dropping white into like these like into the hides that I was developing. I made some hides a little bit larger. Like the one is on this shoulder. That one I expanded a little bit larger, so I could have some more of that pink there because it seems like a big area of reflection. And it's really crazy how like much it changed from before to after. There's less red, but it still reads red. I just needed to be very again surgical about it.
Yeah, there's almost a level of like this weird, the way the human mind interprets things. Where it's like while you're close up and creating it, you're looking at it through a different lens than you will look at it, or other person will look at it when they just pick it up. And it's like you have to like remind yourself that what I'm painting now does not seem right, but it will seem right at some point.
Yeah, or hopefully, yeah.
It's kind of the same kind of thing. General NMM, you're just like the first 80% of painting NMM. You're like,
I just feel so bad.
It's like none of these steps feel like I'm getting any closer to the end.
You gotta trust the process. So now what I'm struggling with this guy is like I'm trying to like. Do I actually like commit to this full red Vader? Because he is all black pretty much. And so if I want to do red, then like all of him should be red. And it's like, can I make that look good? Is that just going to look like a gimmick? Is that going to look like an experiment or a test rather than like an actual legitimately good scheme? And so I've been trying to figure out like different hues of red to use and stuff like that. I don't know. I kind of want it to be all red, but I think that's just going to ultimately look bad. But we'll see what happens.
I think you can do it all red. I think, you're just going to not be afraid to say this thing is red, kind of like his pants and his gloves are right now. It's like, I can tell that they have that warmth to them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not finished painting them yet.
Yeah, especially the gloves and stuff.
Yes, but you need that variation even in a monochrome scheme. Like, you need that. Otherwise, the bright reds aren't going to sell. The shiny reds won't sell if everything is too close to that.
Yeah.
You just don't get as bright.
I reduced the pinstriping effect on his pants and his sleeves. Does that come across, or does it just look like I didn't paint it?
No. It looks executed well. You can tell that there's the very fine line precision work. Yeah, I really like the pants.
Thank you.
I think that they work really, really well.
I think that was the two pieces of feedback both you lads had, was the shininess of the red and the pants just looking goofy. So now I'm on to painting like the rest of like his like underrobed thing and then his big cape, and then can bring some kind of sword.
Yeah, and then you'll and then once you have that all together, that's good. I always find like once you get all the color and everything and you're like, it all looks good. Maybe it's done, maybe it's not done. I'm not worried about that. Then you'll know where to put the rest of your time. You're like, oh, maybe I do need to even go brighter, or oh, maybe the undercloak should be a little darker and the upper cloak should be brighter, or vice versa, or whatever. But yeah, you're to the point where it's going to start all pulling together.
Yeah, I hope so. Definitely the armor is right now for sure.
And he did some work on this little pew pew bike. Jet aircraft.
So I finally got this weird milliput smoke rocket thing kind of painted. I think I need to go a little bit brighter with the gray on like the back bubbles. But the way that painted up was super easy. I base coated it with a paintbrush, all this mid-tone turquoise, and then with darker blues and then blacks, I just like blended toward the back of the smoke, and then specifically targeted like the tops of the bubbles. So like the part that's like closer to the source of the light, like the jet flame, is more blue, and the parts that further out are darker black and also ultimately gray. At the very back of like the plumage, or whatever you want to call it, the smoke trail. Plumage. So I think I need to go a little bit harder with the gray to get more contrast in the smoke and stuff like that. But it was a super easy technique. I don't think you need a lot of precision with an airbrush to be able to accomplish it. You kind of just point and just do little little sprays until it gets bright enough and large enough that some of the blue is still there, but the gray is building up on top of like one of those little bubbles. It was really easy.
Yeah, and especially if you're working with a semi-transparent or diluted down.
Oh yeah.
Or ink, then it's like you can kind of build it as you need.
Exactly. Yeah. I was getting a little bit of spider webbing, but I just turned on the PSI. Thinned my paint a little bit more, and then just did it in more layers, and then it was fine. Made sure I dried each layer that I sprayed on with a little bit of airbrush, air, and then you're good to go.
What kind of space fuel is used to make blue flames?
Baja Blast.
Oh no, we need to hit up the TB shell station to fill up on Baja Blast before we head out into hyperspace.
Yeah. Otherwise, I got this thing largely painted. I need to put on the tailerons, or the fins that determine where it's going and stuff.
Is that actual nerd term?
Yeah, they're called. So the flaps on a plane are called ailerons, and the ones on the tail are called tailerons.
Jesus Christ.
That's about the extent of my aeronautical knowledge. So don't ask for any more. We gotta put those on. Those will be cream, so it'll like bring back the cream scheme. The cream scheme in the back. I got the jet flames that I sculpted all painted up, and those look like they don't look like I sculpted them. They kind of look kind of okay.
That smoke does not look like you sculpted it out of shit from your mom's craft drawer.
Yeah, this stuff. Yeah.
None of those do.
Got the harpoon gun on there. I put 2 of the rockets on the bottom.
Yeah, dude, you need more rockets.
I know. Well, I foolishly put this pin where the fucking rocket goes. So I think if one is like in progress of being shot, I can just say that one was already shot. I'll just keep that one off.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty happy with it. I got I don't know. I definitely talked about this. I don't know if you want to hold it.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, just grab it by that pin. I did a couple fun things. I used my Cricut to make a custom stencil for this buzzsaw blade sun logo. Yeah, that I've kind of I made a little thing in Illustrator, which is based on a circular saw that I then kind of tried to elongate the teeth to make it more like sun rays.
Mm-hmm.
And so I cut out a mask with my Cricut, and then I airbrushed that on. The one thing I did that I wouldn't do again is I put the stencil down, and then on top of the stencil, I put down latex as a masking fluid. Like I sponged it on. And then I airbrushed on top of that. I did some blending. And then when I removed the tape, because it was below the latex, it pulled the latex up with it, which I kind of knew this was going to happen. I wanted it to happen, but it really took a lot of paint with it, and the shape kind of got blown. It looks like a thing still.
Yes.
But like there's a lot of really cool detail I made in that stencil and in that original SVG file that it just got obliterated because I was a little too heavy-handed with the latex, and it really got pulled up with all the tape.
But it looks like a realistic wear and shipping from.
Totally. Then I got a custom decal over there, which I'm pretty happy with that. I think I kind of fully integrated that into the surface. It doesn't seem like a decal, right? You don't see the edges very much.
No.
So that was pretty good. I've struggled with that in the past. The key is just to really cut. Normal decals are nice because they come with a perforated clear edge around the shape.
Yeah.
You have to cut that perforation with an X-Acto knife when you make a custom one because it's just one big sheet. And so the closer you get to the design, the less you have to kind of like mess around with trying to fade it into the model. And so that's what I did this time. Cut really close to the design. And then obviously a couple layers of varnish that match the finish of the paint, and you're good to go. But it's coming together. I got the antenna on there. I got the harpoon launcher, the guns on the side. I'm really happy with that. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's really you're gonna have a really awesome moment when you get glue on the shooting rocket.
I know, yeah. Do a little bit of that sculpting blending too with the smoke.
Like the movement of that being shot out and the angle of it on that cool base you made is gonna really bring it to life.
It's gonna be a cool centerpiece model for the Army, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try as hard on any other vehicle that I paint, but I've always thought this ship was the coolest fucking ship in 40K. I've always loved it, and so I wanted to do it a little bit justice.
Yeah, it is really, really cool. Is this Maltol chrome over the...
Yeah. That's
an airbrush?
Yep, yeah. I airbrushed it first and then painted it second, but then I fucking got my finger on it, and I tried to wipe it off, and I think you can see on its left side, it's starting to fog up a little bit. And that's from me repeatedly rubbing it with a little sponge thing to try to clean it. And I think I'm starting to wear at the finish a bit.
I wouldn't have noticed it without you saying so. But yeah, I can see it now.
You can't see it. Yeah. So I think I might try one last time of an alcohol wipe just to see if that'll clean it up again. But otherwise, I'm just gonna stop touching it.
Yeah, I think it looks great. I love that hyper reflective.
Yeah, I know.
Nature of it.
Yeah, I like it too. Or kind of like an astronaut visor or something like that. Yeah.
All right, that's a pretty sweet ship.
Thank you, man.
I've never done a vehicle with that much effort, and that's I love the. It's so many hours too. It
really is.
You forget when you're just making little fucking spaceman dudes. It's also the not having as many reps and stuff like that.
I know it's a new thing, right? Yeah. And the obvious exclusion that I'm doing with this jet is I'm not putting any I'm still undecided on this, but like enamel dust, where's the fucking sand? It's
right.
It has a huge sandstorm below it for a base. You would think there'd be sand on this, but my fear with it is that there was decent contrast on this black and on this cream. And then through me touching it and fucking with it and using varnishes and using other more aggressive materials like rubbing off the latex, I've rubbed away a lot of paint. And I don't know how I would do this clean. I don't know how I'd paint this thing looking clean because I would just so much shit. I just wipe it away. You don't even notice it. And it's oh, there's a fingerprint there. If I show it a certain kind of light, I can see it. It's I so much props go to those guys that paint race cars and make them look flawless and glossy and beautiful. You need a special setup for that. I can't be holding onto this pin and painting it. This is awful.
I don't know how. I think they do everything in panels and shit too.
Yeah, and I don't know how to solve that problem right now because there's silver chipping and I can't paint on top of that with more black. It'll cover the silver chipping a little bit. I don't know if that's a huge issue, but I do note that there is a contrast issue going on right now with the cream and the black. I think it should be a little bit deeper, but I don't know if I'm going to solve that at this point. I think it's fine.
I think you get to the point where you are putting it on the base. You have it connected to the base, and so then you can hold it by the the base rim, not touch it anymore.
Sure.
And then you can go back and kind of re-establish any more deeper weathering that you wanted to add. And the good thing about using like thinned enamels for that is because you're not necessarily in a lot of the areas going to have a ton of precision because of just the angles of holding, and you've got the big wave in the base. But if you're using the enamels, you can just kind of buff it out and erase things if you made mistakes as you're going through that. So you get it where you want, because it's all, removal steps, and you're not going to worry about removing any of the stuff you've done there. So
yeah. I think it's coming along. I'm excited to be done with it. Honestly, it's getting to the point where it's a little like taxing and not fun anymore.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very excited to finish the base.
Use that speed boost to get through the finish line.
Yeah.
Just see it through. It looks great, so you don't need to be like, oh no, I got to put a ton more hours to make it actually look great.
Yeah, I think the base is gonna paint super fast. Like now that I've done like all the sculpting work, I have a little bit more with those 3D printed succulents and stuff. But I think it's gonna paint super fast with an airbrush and stuff, and like enamels and splattering. I don't need to be too precious about it.
No.
Yeah, all right. We're 50 minutes into this podcast. Time to get into the main topic.
Oh boy! All right, so today's topic is brought to us by Scuba Steve.
He's definitely done one other topic too, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's a prolific topicerator. it's on his resume.
And we're gonna expand this topic a little bit, but I do want to read Scuba Steve's original question. It's this: D&D and minis. How impactful are miniatures to the game of Dungeons and Dragons, and how far should/would you go in buying/printing and painting these minis? For example, on the low end, you could print a small mini for the BBEG and not paint it. I have no idea what that is. You know what that is?
I think it's big bad evil guy.
Okay.
Like your big villain.
Yeah, the boss. Okay. So you have a marker, whereas on the big end, make giant terrain/dungeon pieces with various NPCs and characters with hordes of enemies. To what degree would you paint everything for sessions you play? And we're going to expand this to wargaming as well.
And board gaming.
Do you need painted terrain? Do you need fully painted armies? How much does painted armies really contribute to your experience? Is immersion a thing we experience? Is it something that you experience? We want to ask all those questions today and more.
And more.
Oh, the podcast that has. No, also, if you want to ask questions that we discuss here on the podcast, you can do that as by being a patron, which you can find a link down in the description below. For $5 a month,
Yep.
you become a Sprued and Spruette.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's what it's called. And then you can do topics. You can submit models for feedback from us, and you also get access to extended episodes. So yeah, all that stuff.
Nice. Thanks, Scuba Steve, for allowing us to shill. Really, the patrons are a massive help for us to keep this shit show on the rails. So we really appreciate the goody peepees out there. All right, so do we want to tackle this like game type by game type, or I think that's where my brain goes.
Yeah.
To keep it categorized. Let's start with miniature war games.
Okay.
Let's start with the big bad in the room.
Yeah.
I will say, like, when you think of going to the game store when you were a kid, going to a Games Workshop when you were a kid, or seeing the display in the window of the game store, seeing their display cabinets, seeing this epic battlefield with all the models painted, and there's like little painted trees or a ruined piece of a building or whatever. More often than not, I think for many of us, that's the thing that just like sets off your spidey sense to be like, oh shit,
Yeah.
this is awesome. Because I think there's a lot of different games that people can play. There's a lot of different hobbies that people can have. Something about the connection to this like visual representation of something awesome in the real world, not on a video game screen or a TV screen, is kind of what draws us to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think innately, and this maybe is a little bit of a preview of my thoughts on all of these, but it does change a bit, that some aspect of that is why we love these games.
The physical nature of it, the complete like picture in our head and stuff like that.
An epic real scene that looks like it could be playing out in reality, but it's just on this small tabletop. Mm-hmm. Like seeing that and be able to pick your awesome painted model up and moving it over this, ruined graveyard, and then putting it over here, and then there's a skeleton over there. Like there's something about that, especially in wargaming, that it is a strictly physical visual game, like that I think is really, really valuable.
I think any of us, if we were asked the question, would you prefer to play with painted stuff versus non-painted stuff? I think everyone would answer, obviously, painted stuff. There's no value to painting with gray plastic and stuff like that. But I guess a question that comes up is like, how much can you tolerate, right? Or like, how much benefit do you really get from it in a gameplay session? So like, do you experience immersion while you are playing games like RPGs, board games, miniature board games?
I definitely do in RPGs.
Okay.
I don't in most board games, and in war games there's a little bit, but it's not even like the immersion of the world. It's just like the immersion of this snapshot of a moment of time where something's happening. It's like in this moment, this battle, this skirmish, broke out. This two forces met on this battlefield. You can, not with a lot of depth or lore, that doesn't really interest me, but just like seeing how this plays out. There is a level of immersion in two painted forces on a nice gaming mat with a couple of pieces of painted terrain on a war game, especially. I'm like, that adds something for me. If the game is fun, if I really love the game, this is a game I want to play, I don't need that to enjoy that for a war game.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's definitely for me a bit of a novelty when you like first show up to the table and you put out your deployment and it's like everything is painted and it's nice. I've had this opportunity to do it a couple times with Necromunda because of John Schaefer's amazing painted tables. I also went and played with David, and he has all painted terrain as well. And so there's a bit of this kind of like awestruck moment when you really sit down, and it's not a thing that I do a lot. I don't play with fully painted armies a whole lot, and so it's still kind of a fresh and fun feeling for me. That's like, wow. But the moment I get into the game, it's like that stuff just melts away. And it's all about just playing the game, the mechanics of the game, how I can best, manipulate the rules of the game to win. And so for me, outside of that initial feeling, there isn't a whole lot of immersion. And I would love to learn how to experience that more and have more joy in that.
Yeah, taking a deep breath and just being like, oh no, looks like your demon prince walked into my sea of, gene stealers, and just like taking in that moment is like taking a picture with your eyes and just like, oh, this is a cool moment. I find myself very similar to you, is I wish I appreciated that more. My brain is like running on all cylinders for all the mechanics and the strategy and the reaction to the thing they did, whatever. And I don't smell the roses.
You know what? It's so interesting, actually. It's to think about. Miniature war games typically have a very complicated rule set, but then also at the same time, they can be so immersive. And those two things feel like they are like at odds with each other, right? It's like I'm trying to make sure I'm following all my rules, make sure I'm using all my special stuff that I gained from the previous games and all these things while also trying to like enjoy myself. And that seems hard to do at the same time.
It really kind of feels like you need to get this level of like monk enlightenment.
Yeah, kind of.
You have to get to this level of like all things in the universe are balanced, right? You need to find that balance within yourself, and only then will you achieve true next level enlightenment in playing Warhammer or whatever. And I'm saying that as a joke, but I'm also kind of being honest. Like I honestly think there's something there.
Yeah. And I think that comes from reps, right? Like we just need to play more war games.
Yes.
And like maybe even the same war games, so you can get more comfortable with the rule set. You're not missing stuff, and then you can enjoy the experience better. What I've done, instead of taking breaks to take mental snapshots, I do something similar to that. It's like when a cool thing happens, or for me, when a annoying thing happens. Like I had a guy walk up and blow up to commit suicide. He did nothing, and that can be really frustrating if you think about that. But I was like, what if I'm imagining a movie of this happening in my head? What did that scene look like? And, maybe there's a bit of comedy to it. Maybe there's a bit of like horror as the guy realizes he's about to die for nothing. And so like when I can visualize a movie scene in my head of the characters that I've painted in a situation that they're in, it like that starts to help me like see the narrative and kind of start to piece it together.
Yeah. I like that thought process of like, there's the movie that's playing out.
Yeah, it's like, how would you justify this plot thing happening?
Right.
And then it makes it seem more okay. and less ridiculous. Like there's like a 1 in 60 chance this would have happened. And it's like, well, who cares about that? Like, what does it look like in the real world?
Right.
Quotations.
'Cause any movie that you watch in this, a moment, a scene in the movie could feel completely out of left field, completely disconnected to whatever, but everything was put into the final cut of a movie for a purpose.
Yeah.
It all has its place, and it was there to either like, it could be something very literal into a direct thing that you are kind of foreshadowing to something that'll happen later in the movie, or maybe it's a little bit more highfalutin, that it kind of represents something and something that you'd learn or that character learns that witnessed the dude accidentally blowing himself up, that later on he takes that thing that he learns and applies it in a different way. It's like we maybe downplay the actions in the game as strictly luck or lack thereof to dice rolls to determine the thing that happened. But what if we separated ourselves from that and be like, oh no, we assume they're all morons that accidentally blow themselves up. There's no way that these guys stand a chance against the great Primaris Marines they're against. And yet
stuff happens. Like,
right?
Like what if in an RPG, Legolas skateboarding downstairs on a shield was like an insane roll. Like that was like a crit. And it's like, that is the coolest moment of Helm's Deep, and you remember that, and you remember it when it happens in gameplay as well, right? So it's like those swings are important, and like they're cool, and like they're memorable.
And you don't, him riding skateboard shielding, down the railing isn't cool if he can do it at will.
Exactly, yeah. If it was like a calculated, easy thing, yeah,
right.
100%, yeah.
And that's the same kind of thing of like your silly little, chaos dude cultist, gets a random 6 crit to kill a Primaris Marine by plonking him right through the eye socket.
Exactly, yeah.
That shouldn't happen.
Yeah. But it did, and it's fucking cool when it happens.
Yeah, and you can be mad because statistically, my Primaris Marine should not be dying here.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it like fun if you lean into it instead of getting upset with the mechanics, which I am as guilty as anybody.
100%. Yeah, it's really hard to get over that.
Yeah, and you're right. It's just kind of like just reps. Like you just need to feel like it's almost like, I don't want to say second nature, like you're breathing, like you're not conscious of every breath you take. It just kind of happens. But enough comfortable with the rules where you're allowing yourself to separate the mechanics from you just enjoying the moment and stuff. And I realize that like sometimes like when we play Age of Sigmar with like Vince just kind of just knows all these things, and then he can focus his energies on other things. Or when you play a game with like Don Haney, where Don just he just has a level of positivity and fun nature to him, and he also knows the rules, but he's just focusing on the things that really bring him joy in the game. I think we can learn from both of those kinds of people.
I'm trying to think while we're discussing this, does a painted table of models contribute to this experience? Does it make it easier to think about the narrative of what's happening instead of focusing on the mechanics? And for me, really, that visceral reaction of just like, whoa, a painted table and painted models, awesome. That's really what it does for me. I don't know if it like helps with like remembering to focus on the narrative of a game as opposed to the outcome of a game and the individual moments in the game.
I think if you have yourself in the right mindset, so if you don't, it's probably not going to help. But more if you can like try to put yourself a step closer to that right mindset, it's going to pull you in more the more you're dealing with the painted models. I think it's easier to just like not get into it and focus on those other positive aspects of the game if the shit's all gray, or if it's just on a regular ass table with some, crappy whatever generic terrain from the game store you grabbed out of their closet or whatever, and it doesn't really
you can see the
fit.
pink foam chips and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a Roman Coliseum somewhere over there, and we're playing in the 41st millennia. Yeah.
Whatever. It's it's the Space Spartans. Whatever. It's fine. It's fine.
That's a fucking thing for sure.
But yeah, I think it aids you in that, and it allows you. The other thing that it really does, I think, is not even so much the look of them on the table, but it is the commitment. You have put in the time and the effort, and you've painted these models, and you're really more invested now. There's a level of investment of having that fully painted army as opposed to kind of painted. Some of them are primed, some of them are all gray, and that kind of a thing. Like that, it doesn't just affect your, the visual satisfaction, but also like I'm more connected with the game because I've spent more time preparing for this, and it's just like, oh, I feel like I can enjoy it more because anything in life that you put more effort into, more time, more work into, you get more satisfaction out of when, you see the fruits of your labor. And that kind of is that. So I think there's value there that's maybe a little bit under the surface that you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I've felt that, when I've played games, and sometimes even it's like, I kind of haven't thought about that. And then someone I was saying is, I'm playing, I could do this when I played Warcry and stuff. They're like, oh my gosh, like, oh yeah, your Warcry warband's all painted and it looks pretty sweet. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I appreciate that. Like, that's cool. Yeah, they do look cool. And then I was like, oh, I just needed to jar myself to remind myself, because I looked at these fucking things for hours as I was painting them. I kind of don't see them, but now I do. And I think getting your models away from your painting table and then into a real gaming environment gives you a new level of appreciation and kind of,
and a different perspective, like you just said. Like, again, like when you set up an RPG session or a game, and then someone else, maybe a normie, like especially in RPGs, because like there's often a person who is the miniature painter, right?
Yeah.
And then other people aren't engaged in that hobby a whole lot, and they're really easy to impress. And so when they come in and they bring that positive vibe of like, holy cow, you did all this stuff, it really kind of changes your mindset about, maybe I didn't do enough, to, oh, I did do enough, and people are liking it and they're impressed by it and it's making their experience better. So that also helps you to, I think it would help to be like, more on board with the story and what kind of work you put in.
Yeah. One thing I do, the mindset I kind of have, I don't know if it's positive or negative, with wargaming is like, it's going to take you a while to paint your whole warband or your whole army. Like it's going to take time. And it's okay to play games with them before they're all done. I think that's healthy. It kind of keeps you your thumb on the pulse of the game, gets you to learn your army a little bit, and that's just fine. The way I try to mentally think about it is like, this is like sports ball. It's preseason. It says practice with your own team. It's doing scrimmage games with other teams before the season starts, before the real show starts. And the way, if I look at it that way, I feel better about it, because I feel like I'm putting in some work and some effort to get better at the game, to learn the game, to understand what my team or my army does well, and oh, maybe I actually could use some more range shooter guys. That's okay. I don't have all my stuff painted yet. I can kind of try that out. But I'm working towards the regular season. The regular season when the games count. And by count, I just mean I've got everything painted and I'm like, really now fully invested in this army and that kind of thing. So I still think that there's value in playing games without fully painted armies. But it's a fun little goal to say like, well, this is work. But I don't like to tell myself, like, this is how all my games are going to be with unpainted stuff. Because if I tell myself that I'm okay with it, then I'm worried then it's just like, I just won't finish projects, Okay.
You need a bit of that encouragement to finish, a bit of that end goal to strive for.
Yeah. And seeing some painted units on the table actually has helped me to want to paint more. So I'm like, oh, those guys look so freaking cool standing on that objective over there. Man, it would be so much cooler if the awesome hero behind them was not gray.
It's actually kind of funny. Like the more you paint, the more it encourages you to finish, because it's like when you have a fully gray thing, there is a level of it looking cohesive because it is all gray. Mm-hmm. And then you paint one thing, and it's like, this looks bizarre, because it's like one painted thing and now it's all gray. And then the further you get along in the painted journey, it's like, well, now that one thing that isn't painted is sounding like a sore thumb. And so then it's a little bit easier to get encouraged to paint it.
Yeah.
Which is funny. All right, but now role-playing. I know you have some opinions on this.
Yeah, okay.
So where do you stand when it comes to miniatures in role-playing games?
Yeah, okay. So let me just start with this.
I wish we had the Vince stuff for this.
Yeah, so there's a friend of ours. He may have been on the podcast recently, and he's played some version of Dungeons and Dragons as long as me, probably longer, and I've been playing for about 30 years. And we'll just call him Vincent Wincerella. Okay,
Wincerella.
Yeah, Vincent Wincerella is his name. He doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons with miniatures. He doesn't play with any miniatures. He doesn't play with the board. He doesn't play with a map. He doesn't play with any of that stuff. And if you were to say there's some person in this universe that plays an RPG, a game that uses painted miniatures to create a scene that somebody like a Vincent should be the person most excited about doing so. You'd say, what the hell is wrong with this man? There's a lot of reasons why I think miniatures in a miniature, like the battlefield and that kind of stuff in a role-playing game is very valuable, because you're otherwise left to everyone else's own theater of the mind and how they're interpreting something, and there's no way, unless you want to spend 45 minutes of breaking down a scene word by word, and even then people are going to forget much of the details you said, that everyone's mental picture is the same as the others. Your spatial reasoning. How far am I from that desk over there? How far am I from that goblin that's rushing into the room? How far am I, and how far does my bow shoot? And like, how close am I from giving my companion a healing potion that's dying? Like, there's all these like mathematical things that really are really valuable that you then don't need to explain. Everyone's on the same wavelength of looking at the stuff on the table and can all make their own decisions. So miniatures in a role-playing game, I will argue, for most role-playing games, other than like rules light ones that it's more about the storytelling and less about the logistics of combat, I think really, really benefit from that. Now, what needs to be painted? In my group, we have a rule that not everybody in my group are painters. We have people that haven't painted hardly at all, or the only miniatures they've ever painted are their characters for D&D. And we make everyone paint their own character, because it doesn't matter how well you paint it, doesn't matter how good a painter you are, because that's building a connection and an investment in that character. Mm-hmm. And you did it. And there's something fun about hanging out with your friends, especially ones that aren't miniature painters, and walking them through it and painting your mini beside their mini and them asking you questions, and them undoubtedly every single time I have done this, they are proud of the model that they painted, and they get to see that one model, move them around the table every single session. It gets so much play for how many hours you spent painting it. Mm-hmm. I think all RPG games, you should have your characters painted.
Yeah.
They're the heroes of the story. They're going to be on the table all the time.
Yeah. So then you play with a grid.
Yeah, we play on a grid system.
Okay.
Yep.
Does that grid have an overlay of like a forest or a cave, or is it just like white?
Yeah, we've got some different ones. We've got mats and stuff that are forest or desert or like a cobblestone and stuff like that. You can do that. But you can also just use a white one. We use that a lot of times too, because then you can use a wet or dry erase board and you can draw out the map of the area, or you can sketch out stuff quick. Because oftentimes in RPGs, the thing that I really struggle with in terms of whole immersion on the table is the amount of time midst session to set things up and arrange things and whatever. Because you want to keep the action moving. You want to keep things fun. So we have an organization system with totes and whatever, and everything's labeled with a label maker and whatever. So you can grab some stuff, but sometimes it just takes time to set stuff up. So I like to have a variety, but all of our 3D terrain is all painted though too. So trees and walls, so we can wall off a section.
God damn, do you ever take pictures of this stuff?
Sometimes, not often enough, because more often it's kind of quick putting together, here's a room. Or like what I often like to do in running my game too is I like to end cliffhangers at the end of a session right at the start of like an epic battle. And then what it allows me to do is the next session, I show up a little bit early and I set the whole thing up before the players get there. So that thing that can take you 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get everything set up and go find the right stuff, make sure I got the right minis for the bad guys and everything. I set that all up. And then I can drape like a towel over it, so they can't see it. And then we sit down, we start the regular session or whatever, and it's like, reminder, last where we were, you guys walked into the Coliseum, and then you reveal it, and like you're in the Coliseum. So those moments are really, really fun. The kinds of things that, from my experience, the only kinds of gaming experience I've had in my life come from those kinds of are from that kind of moment in the Dungeons &
Dragons moment kind of thing.
They're like, oh shit. And sometimes you paint up specific big, huge monster that wasn't painted before, or bring out new models, or even different terrain or little fiddly details if they had to go pull this switch and press these levers and stuff, and having models for that. That's cool. I don't think it's necessary for every single battle, every single situation where your characters are on the map. But There is a lot of value in that time now and then.
So do you only do this kind of thing when you are experiencing a combat encounter, as opposed to like, okay, now we are just chatting with people, we're in an interim stage?
Good question. No, I never bring out the board or have a mat or have their characters on the board moving unless I've said, and now we roll initiative. Okay. Because I've found over the years that if I put them in situations where I want to track their movement and I want them on the board, they're like, we're fucking fighting.
Yeah.
Where's the fucking fight?
Yeah.
And then everyone, usually when they're just kind of like walking around the city streets, and they're be like, oh, look, there's a fucking fruit cart. I think I'm going to go buy a peach or whatever. They're not in I'm going to fight mode.
I'm going to fucking kill that peach, bro.
Yeah. Like their mindset is different, and the way their characters are interacting with the world is different. And I don't want them on kill mode all the time or high alert mode all the time. So
dude, you could have like a transparent grid, like a transparency sheet for a projector that goes on top of like your neoprene gaming mats for wargaming, and you could maybe like double duty them a little bit.
Yeah,
that exists.
It's got to exist.
Right, has to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good idea. So you like the important thing there, as opposed to Warhammer, is you really want the grid.
Yeah.
In fact, it's one of the most frustrating things that I have with Warhammer is all the wasted time fucking measuring shit.
Yeah, there's loss of accuracy.
There's no wasted time in Dungeons and Dragons. My guy moves 30 feet. Each square is 5 feet. I can move 6 squares.
Boom.
Boom. I can visually look down and look at all my options in 10 seconds and know where my guy would want to run.
Yeah.
There's no measuring and looking and, well, am I within range of that thing?
Yeah, because even when it's good, like with Guild Ball, there's still fucking problems. You know, you still bump shit. Mm-hmm. You put down a little AOE thing and it fucks everything up, right? Yeah. So there's measuring. Yeah, it's kind of a bitch.
Yeah. So I think for me, there's value, especially in like those epic moments, right? I want painted stuff. I want the full terrain. I want the full scene in epic moments.
Okay,
that's what I want in my RPG. I don't need it all the time. And oftentimes it's more valuable of getting to the fun of the game, going back to we talked about the miniature war games, appreciating the fun and getting engaged in the world and the situation when we're not chopping it up with dead blocks of time where I'm setting stuff up. You know, we want to, oh shit, this dragon jumped out of the fucking bushes. It's like, oh no. And then I don't want, okay, now, and guys, give me 6 minutes to set this all up. And then.
Well, you're kind of almost like arguing against using models for
I'm
RPGs.
not against using models. I'm against using full immersion with like getting out the different mat and making sure I have the right number of trees and the big cavern rock.
So what's too long?
I don't know if there's a number for that. I think it's more, to me, I think about it more about those epic moments. I'm willing to take the time. If it's not an epic moment, if it's just a random encounter with some kobolds or some goblins or something, we just play that out. And I'll oftentimes too, I have all the access of like the terrain stuff right near where I'm sitting. I'll grab stuff, whatever things I grab, a bunch of little rocks and hills and bushes and trees and stuff. I'll grab that and I try to make it look cool, and whatever I grabbed in 2 handfuls. You know, so then we're just moving, but it does feel like a forest and it does feel unique, and we have the right, close enough depiction of the model. Now, for the painted models, I will say a vast majority of the models we use for Dungeons and Dragons are pre-painted Wizards of the Coast D&D models. Because we had, like, our collection has grown and grown as a group over the years, and we've got thousands of them at this time, and it's just awesome to be able to have those. That said, we've kickstarted like Reaper Bones things. We've got a bazillion. Josh paints a shitload of Reaper Bones. We've gotten some of the new Steamforged Games Epic Encounters ones where the models are really, really nice. I often paint those up for like a boss monster or a really memorable situation. One thing I think is really important too is if you have a badass boss, someone that's like the main villain or whatever, you have a cool painted model for them. It does a couple of things. One, whenever they're there, they feel unique. It's like, oh, this is a unique dude. That's fucking Dracula there, dude. That's fucking Dracula. He's badass. But it also does another really good thing for your game is like, I spent time painting this awesome Dracula model. He's on the table. That means he's getting into a fight with them. I spent all that time. I don't want Dracula to die right now. So it allows you to get your bad guys in the faces to interact with your players multiple times, so they build a relationship, so they learn about each other, they grow their hatred, or they learn maybe this guy's a little bit more complex. And if by using a painted model, it kind of like subconsciously lets me say, I spent like 6 hours painting that. I don't want it to die in the next 40 minutes and not use it anymore. I want to use them. So your reoccurring villains, I like to paint models for reoccurring villains, because then I get to keep using the model. I get more bang for my painter buck.
I'm going to try to be Vince here and be a little bit of a devil's advocate.
Okay, go for it.
See how you respond.
Vince and I have argued over this many times.
I bet. I fucking bet. So there might be an argument. So I can't speak from the Dungeons & Dragons experience, but in reading through the Star Wars RPG book, there are times when the book tells you that the player should be allowed to contribute to the narrative of what's going on.
Yeah.
Like they should be like, oh, there's a crate over here, and I opened it, and I found ammo for my gun. And it's like, okay, like, sure, yeah, you can do that, or like whatever it may be. And there may be, even for the DM, an argument where it's like, if you do set down some amount of models and positioning, you are now restricting the amount of creativity that you can apply to a scene, because there is a doorway there is a physical box there, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, and it has its merits. Anytime you put the characters' minis on the table, you are now focused in their creativity.
Right, yeah.
Or lack thereof.
Yes. I think for people, I think if you can train yourself out of that. But for like the lay person, when you put down a board game mat, you put down terrain, this is what's in the fucking world. Like, nothing else. That's just kind of the default thought, I would think.
Yeah. I think my reaction to that is you need to create an environment for your players, whether there's models on the table or you're playing the game when you're not in the midst of combat, that encourages and rewards them for being proactive in the narrative and decision-making and creative ideas. And if you do that, them having models on the table, and they know that models being on the table does not mean I stop being able to contribute in that way. As long as they feel that and they feel the reward. And when I say reward, I don't mean they get more gold or they get more experience, they get magic items. I mean, like, they had a creative idea. We're going to go with the flow, and something awesome could happen. And you did find the bullets, or you did flip over the table and you saw that there was a gun that was taped underneath the table and stuff like that. Like, as long as you are creating an environment that encourages creativity and proactive engagement by your players, that is what's important.
So how do you do that with painted stuff?
You kind of have the understanding amongst your groups that this gives us an even playing field, so we all kind of understand the basics. Mostly it's dealing with distance, right? Because distance is an important thing, and knowing how the distance of your abilities. How far am I from this, that, or the other? If I go over there, in my brain, I didn't realize that the other two kobolds that you described are actually only 5 feet away. In my head, they were more further away. So, like, it helps you in decision-making, for quicker decision-making. But you also play with the understanding of, if it's not on this board, this isn't a snapshot, one-to-one replication of real life. Just because it's not here doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Okay.
That's what I do.
So like the ground rule setting.
Yeah, ground rule setting. The dimensions of the room are the dimensions of the room, right? All the logistic things, And you see an open door over there, a window over there. Those are all widely held understandings. There's a ton of gray area in there.
Okay.
It's just like, I want to jump from the chandelier. Well, there's a chandelier here now. Like, that's awesome. That's there. If you find yourself having to describe every minutia, every detail, you will spend all your time only doing that at the gaming table, and your players will kind of mentally gloss over because you're talking so much, You want to hit the descriptions of what's really vital, what's really unique, what's really stands out in all of their senses, the smells, the sounds, the sights, the feelings. Like, those things, touch on one or two of those and give them basics and what's important, what would their character, when they scan the room in 3 seconds, what would strike out at them. If there's a giant troll in the room, probably should describe that, But if not, it's like, to be like, there's hundreds of candles that are lining the walls, and they're all faintly glimmering, and shadows are dancing around, and you can't see a lot of what's in the middle, but you think you see some scrawled something on the floor, and there's some debris and maybe some dust or sticks or bones, and you need to get closer to look. You can picture that.
Yeah, that's done. That's enough.
That's enough.
Okay.
You don't need more than that.
It's like 30 seconds, a minute, maybe tops.
A couple sentences, and then let them interact. So that shouldn't stop when miniatures are on the table. But I understand and totally agree there is a very valid argument. Once you put shit on the table, their brain goes strictly to miniature war game rules.
This is a board game, yeah.
It's a board game.
I am now killing shit.
I now have to adhere strictly to the rules of the game, and I have to use only the abilities that are on my sheet.
That's a great argument against what
it is.
What you're saying. Yeah,
100% is.
Because I feel like I would do that too. Like it feels now like a game, and the whole point of a game is to win. It's not to role play. Like role playing in combat seems so challenging for people, just because it's like, I don't want to be okay with an outcome where I am not doing damage or making some kind of progress. Like, but really, that's the same as any, like, interacting with a person by just talking to them. Like, they're going to have outcomes. All the outcomes are fun and interesting to imagine and to kind of like, play out in the theater of the mind. But like when it comes to combat, it's like, it's just frustrating that my role was bad and I didn't hurt the guy.
Yeah.
They're all fun, valid outcomes, right?
Right. The question you have to ask yourself is the point of combat in your game to progress the narrative? Is it to give a challenge, a difficult challenge that could have negative repercussions, or is it some combination of both? I think a healthy way is that it's some combination of both.
Right, yeah.
However, if you play without miniatures, you are really heavily having to lean into it's about immersion and progressing the story, because it is very easy when you do not have nuts and bolts on the table for your players, for things to not go right, for them to just feel bamboozled. They feel that they got because there's not a clear definition that I knew the decision I was making. I felt comfortable in the decision.
And that fucks with immersion.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
It becomes more about the feels bad moment of, well, I wouldn't have done this had I known that. And then it's like, then that becomes the thing you remember in a session or a game of miniature wargaming, right? That thing, it's like, well, that wasn't a valid outcome for this game because
had I known is a big fucking sentence.
I fucking hate that sentence too. I hate it. It's like,
I'm trying to just keep that out, because that's just negativity. It's arguments. It's people getting frustrated. It's
roll with the punches, man.
Shutting down or whatever. And if your game is about like just them coming on an epic journey and being proactive in telling the story of this epic journey, you don't need miniatures to do that. You also got to be really fucking good at your job as a DM to make that go well. And I'd say that there's about 0.2% of people that play D&D that are capable of that. It's not easy. I don't think I'm good enough to do that, and I've been doing this for fucking 30 years. We played with Vince. Vince is good. Vince would need to do that a lot more hours a day than he's doing all these other cool things that Vince is doing to be able to pull that off on a regular basis. It is incredibly difficult. And so if you fall short of that, you may fall over the cliff, right? It's not like, well, I got really close to it, but it wasn't quite there. It was still fun. Sometimes it's like if you fall short, then it just means you're further of the way down to fall. And like, I just am scared of that. It's like I want our base level fun to be like a 6. Every session you come down and play D&D with me, you're going to have a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. Some sessions will be an 8 or 9. We don't know which ones those will be. And I got to be okay with that as running the game, that they're not all going to be fucking all-stars.
Some will be a beekeeper.
Yeah, some will just be a beekeeper.
Some will be an Oscar winner,
But beekeeper is fun for what it did.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's still a 6.
Good old combat encounter. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Just because I'm selfish and I want to ask about the Star Wars thing. It does not have grids. It does not have units of measurement, how fast you can move. What they do is they have engaged, close, medium, long, extreme. And like you need to spend 2 maneuver actions to move from extreme to long, and 2 to go from long to medium, and 1 to go from medium to short, and 1 to go from short to engaged. So it's like these bands. Like how would you set that up with physical terrain? Sure. Like I'm imagining like rings, right? And you move your models in and out of the rings but that's not like immersive, Like how do you make that immersive?
Right. Well, first of all, I see where they're going with that system, because you're trying to make it streamlined.
Right. Yes.
And it actually, that system without miniatures on the table, without a grid, actually that system actually would work pretty well without a grid, honestly. But it works until it doesn't, until it gets past a level of complexity and that isn't even super complex. Because if you have, it's like, oh, there's 3 of us, there's 3 bad guys. It's pretty easy for us to all mentally keep those things in our mind at any one time. But once everyone starts moving, even with 3 on each side, now me being close to you and being far from him, all 3 of us have moved. Now we have a whole new data set of information that you need as the game runner to relay to everyone. Because it's not just that you moved closer, further, or equidistant from them. It's in what direction. Because how that direction they moved now influences how they factor to everybody else.
Right.
So having a visual representation, you'd almost like, you could do it on a grid system where you could say, you kind of say, we're going to assume everyone's playing with, best of intentions. Roughly 2 squares is, or 3 squares, whatever you say, is close. 5 squares is, or 6 squares is medium, and then 9 squares is long, whatever. And just roughly estimate. So you're not needing my approval before every move. We say, okay, he's here, I'm here. That's a medium. I move medium to here. And as long as they're saying it out loud, boom, you can keep it moving. But now when everyone's moving around, everyone doesn't need to keep this exact same map in their head of what it all looks like. Because that's how it works in D&D too. It's like as it gets more complex.
More mobs, yeah.
Yeah. And you can go one of 2 ways. You can either, like, and what Vince does is, like, he just doesn't overcomplicate it. It's just, yeah, the skeletons are over there. Yeah, you move up to them. Yeah, you can attack them. There's no complexity in the encounter from first description, right? And what that also does is, let's say a character in your game has some kind of a speed ability, right? So once a turn, instead of spending 2 actions to move the medium distance, they can spend 1 action to move medium distance. That gives value to that character being speedy. If you're playing everything theater of the mind and you're just kind of wishy-washy on those distances, you've diminished the value of that character. Because everyone can kind of just go where they want to go. It's pretty close, whatever. And it's like, yeah, but I want the guy to feel quick and feel speedy. And if I don't see it out there on the board, I don't feel like you really get to see the value of that. And there's other examples of that, but that's something that I've really, and one thing I brought up with Vince that I really struggle with, is you are really narrowing down the depth of the cool characters that people can play.
Yeah, because an RPG can feel like a board game. It can feel like this, like there is a strict set of rules that you have to operate inside of, and it feels really good when you do it well, and good things happen for you. And then when you remove that kind of board gamey element, now the kind of person that enjoys that experience is now left out, right? And I think I would agree with you as well. I think it'd be difficult for me because the Star Wars game and I imagine D&D and various versions of it do have a lot of mechanical rules about combat and like how it's supposed to work. And so when you kind of just leave that all off, well, no, you're losing that element of gameplay.
Yeah, a lot of that mechanic stuff down to every single different spell and every different special ability from every different class and every different thing. It's like it is all grounded in the same universe of balance or mechanics and all that. And so when you take it out of the system, especially fucking Vince plays D&D 5th edition, which is every rule in that game is based on playing on a 1-inch grid. So you decided you're going to play a game that is entirely balanced around a 1-inch grid system and just not use that. I think it's horseshit. Now,
well, it seems to be working for him.
Hey, somehow. To each their own. There are a lot of crazy people in this world. I will say there are awesome games. Again, example of which is one that we've played, and we played it at Adepticons, called Kids on Bikes. It's basically you're playing out like an 80s kids/teen movie, examples like Goonies and stuff like that. And it's fucking awesome. And there's no grid, and there's no miniatures or whatever. It is strictly theater of the mind. And those games are equally awesome because you never get people in this, what are my abilities? How many squares away? Whatever. It is strictly just living in that moment. And it's so fucking fun.
Yeah.
But it's also really fucking fun as a one shot. It's not something that really can hold its stability over a long campaign because it doesn't have long-term depth. There's not I run over there and I see that there's a baseball bat, sitting in the dugout as the aliens landed in left field. I grab the baseball bat and I run out, whatever. It's like, that's fucking awesome. You can do that. There's stats for what a blunt weapon like that would do and stuff like that. But there's not a lot of that extra stuff. Now, there's probably other games out there because there's a million RPGs these days that can do that and have more structure. It's just a lot of balls to juggle the more you want to add both.
So would you think there seems to be an argument forming here that for a game like that, like I recently played Eat the Reich, which is like a lesser rule burdened game. Those kinds of games have less of a reason to use miniatures and painted terrain and grids and D&D. And the games that try to take life and make a rule set for it, those need a little bit more constructive help.
Yes, exactly. If there are rules for how long you can hold your breath, you probably need a grid. I need a grid.
That's the metric.
Yeah. All right, so let's. Do you feel like we conquered that for role-playing games?
Yeah, I feel good about that. I'm still thinking about how I'm going to do that with the extreme, long, medium, short, engaged range band system. But I'll think about that at a later date. But yeah, I think
engaged is base to base or within an inch.
Oh, absolutely,
Age of Sigmar.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I mean, you could do if you have like those quick, almost like I think they use them for the Star Wars Shatterpoint game or something, where they just have 3 different ruler things.
Yeah. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and those units mean literally nothing because there's no consistency. Like you would think 1 is 1 inch.
Yeah.
You think it's something. You think that a 3 is just 3 ones put together? No,
it's not. Fuck that.
It's just fucking made up units.
It should just be symbols, not shit. They do that like Kill Team too, where they're just symbols on a thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, you could play not on a grid, and you'd have 3 of those, and they all represent short, medium, and long. Range band. And you tell the entire group, as long as it's close, right? I don't want you going down to measure down the millimeter if this would then touch his base, whatever. No, if it's close, you can even put it 3 inches off the top of the table and say, yep, that's close. Do it. And then you can move them quickly. They have a tool that there's no measuring done or whatever, and then they just know how they can go. And the movement phase is being done fast, and they have some visual representation. So as the song of the battle is played out and all these moving parts move around, things are still moving fastly, and they feel more confidence in their abilities and what actions they can take. That's what I would do if I was playing that game.
Yeah, like just some sticks that represent extreme range, like I put a stick down. If it's close, then it's extreme range.
Yes. Close enough. That's it. And then you get to use your cool like Shatterpoint or the other Star Wars miniatures and shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. That I'm very excited about, using Legion models and stuff like that. And I also play the board game Imperial Assault. So we haven't been talking about board games at all, but
let's get into that.
So in July I'm going to my friend's parents' lake house with just me and 2 other dudes. And we did this one other time. We played Imperial Assault, which is a Star Wars board game where you take on the role of like a rebel, and you play as a single character, and it's like a RPG. You level the character up, you get new abilities, you get new gear, you fight the Empire in a story-based mission. And so we're going to do the same thing this time. We're going to get one of the expansions for Imperial Assault, and we're going to play through all of that. And this time, I want to fucking go ham. I want to make a video about it, because I just love this idea of like setting up a cool immersive experience for your friends. And I want to like get like polyfiber and put like the little pulsing twinkling LEDs inside of it. So it's like, because I want to do the Hoth expansion, so it looks snowy around the perimeter of the board. I want like the area where you keep the models that aren't currently in play to be like a little like igloo bunker. Like if that's extreme, I don't know if I'm gonna do all that stuff, but like my mind is wandering, and I'm kind of asking the question like, how far could you go if you went that far? Is there going to be music? Do you play D&D with music on, like a generic track in the background?
We do, yeah.
Okay, is it just like a 10-hour long looping fantasy song or something like that? Or do you like play battle music when the battle happens?
I have done that sometimes, because Joshy's got like a TV and speakers in that room, and then we set up to link to it on your phone so you can control, whatever you're playing through there. I have done that. I don't make a regular habit of it, but like for big epic like boss fights and for like the finale of like a campaign and stuff, I have a fucking playlist track and the order and shit that I do. But by and large, it's like we just have it on low, and it's the fucking Conan the Barbarian soundtrack, or it's the Lord of the Rings soundtrack, or the Harry Potter, just generic fantasy kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna try to do that this time with our Imperial Assault like game. I'm gonna see like, they have cardboard door archways for the game, but I know for a fact there are fan-made STL printed 3D archways for doors and stuff like that, and crates and stuff. And so it's like, I want to try that out. I want to see how much that contributes to the experience, how much they appreciate it, if it makes it more enjoyable. It's kind of like a miniature war game. It's probably going to add to it. How much do you need? I don't know.
Yeah. So I will say this. Now, I don't have a lot of experience playing board games with fully painted models.
Yeah,
other than Kingdom Death. And Kingdom Death's a really interesting game for painted models, and it differentiates from most of the games that I play. And it actually lends itself really well to having painted models, because the way the campaign system works is it's not a shitload of tiny models to paint. It's just everything's a boss and then your characters. It's always fucking fun to paint your characters. Come on, dude. That's the reason why we got into mini paintings, is to paint our awesome
cool heroes. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool heroes. So that part's awesome. You don't have a ton of bad guys, and you end up being able to play against that same bad guy multiple times in a campaign, or inevitably everybody dies and you got to start a new one. You're going to play it again, and you're going to be able to use those again. So that it feels like I get more value. And the thing that I have issues with for painting board games is the games that I play are typically like well-reviewed games, and all that kind of stuff, like Gloomhaven, like the one we're playing right now, Oathsworn, which might be my fucking favorite board game thus far. Outside of Kingdom Death, it's kind of a different animal, but they're campaign-based games. In these campaign-based games, the way I look at it is I really can enjoy them. I can love them. I'm going through to experience the campaign, and I think it's worthy of my time to do so, but I'm not going to replay it, more than likely, And I don't know until I'm about 5, 6, 7 sessions in if I really like this or not. And at that point, that's when I'm going to make the decision that I'd be willing to paint stuff for it if I really like it. And then I'm like, well, I'm X sessions in. How many more do we have? and then I've got to paint this stuff.
How long is it going to take? Yeah,
how long is it going to take?
4 sessions worth of time?
You start doing all this math, and you're just like,
yeah,
nah, I'm just not going to do it. And then a lot of the games, including Oathsworn, if you have the miniatures for it, the way that they do it for the bad guys is they're in like secret boxes, and they don't tell you which box to open until it's like they jump out of the woods at you and they're screaming, and they're 8 people with centipede legs and fucking pinchers on their nutsacks, and like and they're like open box 6, and then you go over and you pick this up. Oh fuck, look at those fucking pincher nutsacks. Like you see the models, and then you start to fight. I didn't get no time to fucking paint this shit.
Yeah, you need a game master player who is cracking that box, painting that shit, putting it back in the box.
Right? And half of the fun is us having that aha, oh shit moment of picking the models out, seeing them for the very first time together. Yeah. And so it's like the games it's just almost built into the mechanics or the way these games run, kind of to not encourage you to paint the stuff.
Yeah. That's true. I'll admit, like, if I wasn't actively interested in Star Wars Legion, in playing a Star Wars RPG, there's no fucking part of me that's going to paint all that shit for Imperial Assault for one playthrough of a campaign. No way. The thought of getting to reuse the models is really a huge contributing factor in my decision. So yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying.
Now, if a game had like the core game and you played the core campaign or whatever, and you really liked it, like this is one of my favorite games that I've played, and then it starts coming out with like expansions that kind of like get mixed in, allows you to play a new campaign, but now it's fresh. Now there's a bunch of new things. Then I'd be like, well, you know what? If I painted the stuff in the core box, and then there's not a giant pile for the new stuff, and then I know that they're going to keep coming out with these, and I'd only have to paint a little bit each time there's a new thing and fold it in, and it's streamlined enough game where I can replay it without it being this heavy lift to do so, I'd consider it. But that's just, it ends up not being the most of the games or the way that they design games. It's like the whole campaign and everything there is kind of, you got to play it.
Yeah. All right. I think I want to end this conversation with a tier list. So if you have no time, or depending on how much time you have, what are you deciding to paint? What's number one priority? Is it the terrain? Is it is it the big piece of terrain, small pieces of tchotchkes? Is it villains? Is it heroes? Is it what are the highest value things in order from first to last?
Okay.
Obviously first is your characters.
I don't even know. I'm actually thinking that might not be the case for
That's what I would think, the novice art role player that I am.
Yeah. So for the board games, Or are you talking universally, or are you talking just for board games?
Maybe I'm focusing more on role-playing games now. That was like the main crux of the question, but I was maybe more generically, as well, like all three of them put together.
Okay. I think they might differ.
Okay. How they differ?
Okay. I think board games, it's terrain first.
Buildings and stuff.
Yeah. And here's why. If the game comes with like actual 3D terrain, which a lot of them do nowadays, or it's an optional buy, you know, it's a little, give me them add-ons, baby.
Absolutely.
I do that first because they typically come with these really nice thick cardboard, like, terrain things that show the room or show the cavern or the forest and stuff, and they're really nice color and whatever. And then when you put gray shit on top of them or cardboard shit on top of them, it immediately kills it for you. But if they have terrain, I think that like that, you just now have made the whole scene look real. And then the gray of the other stuff, it's not ideal, but you've made the world look real. So I think I'd probably go that first, and then your heroes. But all right, I was just thinking you were going to say the tier list of like least important of these three categories that we looked through, least important to paint and most important to paint.
That's also an interesting question as well.
Yeah. Let's do that, and then we'll go back to what you said because I can't think of the good answer for you yet. Least important of the three to have painted.
Least important. Oh, man. This is I feel like board games.
Yeah. I think board games. I'm perfectly fine in playing a board game and getting all, 90% of the juice out of that apple.
I think you and I are going to differ on number 2, though.
Yeah. My number 2 is RPGs.
Okay, that's also my number 2, RPGs.
Yeah.
I
think that
you can get away with more imagination, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. In my typical, let's say how long is our typical session? Our typical session is about 5 to 6 hours. In our typical session of those, let's say it's 6 hours, maybe an hour and a half of them.
6 hours?
6 hours straight, yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Some sessions are pretty combat heavy, but on an average session, we'll say 1/3 of the time is models on the table.
6 hours.
Yeah.
Fuck. Is that normal?
We only play every other week.
Okay.
So it's our way to get a lot of progress in only playing every other week.
Okay.
So that's why we play pretty hard.
That's incredible. Yeah. Okay. So I agree. Like also the thing about it is like a war game is like a fraction of what an RPG is trying to do.
Yes.
Because the RPG is so much more expansive and there's so much more going on, there's got to be more leniency in that system to not have everything painted. Because it's so zoomed in with a war game, that does give you the opportunity to go ham with details because you are playing in a static environment. It doesn't change and it's going to last the length of a battle, that's
right.
what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we are in agreement on the tier list for what gets the most value out of painted stuff: war games, RPGs, then board games.
Okay. So for board games, I said the most important thing is the terrain.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on you? Because you've played a lot of board games.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Like when it comes to board games, like do you more often get terrain? Do you more often get characters? I think. One thing that's interesting is a lot of board games will come with, beautiful colored cardboard that then, is the surface that goes down on the ground. So it's like that does a lot of heavy lifting for you.
Yep.
And now you don't need a whole lot to go on top of that to really help. Maybe like a neoprene mat below it that matches the environment. And then I think I would start with the things that get the most touching. So like the characters.
Yeah.
And then the arch villains that are the scariest. And then the lowest tier are the enemy grunts that then, get killed instantaneously.
Right.
That's probably how I would do it. I don't know. Like a lot of games don't often come, well, not a lot, but unless you're like buying extra shit, you don't get like 3D chunks of terrain that go on the board. In my experience, so I probably go with the hero characters first.
Yeah, I think some of the games it kind of depends on the game you're playing too, because like when we played the Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle Earth, I think it was called.
Oh yeah.
Definitely paint up your characters, but also you ended up fighting the orcs so much.
Yeah, so that's true too. Yeah, whatever mobs come back often.
Yeah, maybe it's a simple. The answer is always what's going to see the most table play.
Yeah,
and I think that works true for RPGs as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to see the most table play? If you're in a campaign that is an undead campaign where they're going to be fighting a lot of undead things, it's like, well, paint up a bunch of zombies and a bunch of skeletons, maybe some spoopy boys.
Paint up a graveyard.
Yeah, paint up a graveyard, or get that mausoleum GW kit.
Yeah.
put those different pieces together and paint that up, and then bam, you got a bunch of spoopy stuff ready to go.
Easy.
And then for war games, my answer of what to paint first in war games is whatever excites you to sit down and paint first, because you're going to want to paint it all eventually. So what's getting you down to the table today?
Yeah.
You know?
I think for me, and I don't know if you need variety when you're painting, I need variety. And so I feel like for me, not only is it important about what you start with, but also what you mix in during the process.
Yes.
I need to do a character. I need to do a unit. I need to do a vehicle, just because each one of those things uses different skills, and that's interesting in the process, as opposed to like kind of busting your nut on all your heroes, and now you have to paint 60 attack marines. It's like, fuck, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that. Yeah, I use that. That's my dessert, right? My dessert is my single hero. I don't get my pudding if I don't eat my meat. So I need to eat my meat, and I need to paint 80 clan rats, and then I get to...
Yeah, you still got to do that. How do you feel about painting a full army of clan rats now that we're like, maybe like, what was that? This is 4 weeks away from when you had first shown me those schemes, maybe even 6 weeks, I think. How do you feel?
Well, I'm getting ready to start on it.
Are you?
Talk to me next episode.
Have you settled on a scheme?
Kind of.
Okay, purple one, the warm one.
Actually, this weekend I need to go through and do some digging on that. You know that book, the Empire book you have.
Yeah.
Ben said there's a Skaven one. I need to find online PDFs. Just find a thing. But I've actually seen some pictures and stuff for Skaven where it's like they're all fucking like homeless rats. I think there could be like one color, like that's a color, and everything else is just like who fucking knows,
right?
And I think that in and of itself,
that's the hard part, is balancing what would happen in reality with like you have like a way you want this to look, a certain quality level, a certain scheme maybe. It's like how much do you mix that into the reality of the world, the ease of painting? It's a whole fucking set of questions you have to ask and also try and experience for yourself. It's hard.
Yeah,
Then you have fucking 100 of them to paint, and that adds a whole new layer to it.
Just in the starter box alone, there's 40 clan rats.
I've never painted. I painted like 40 skeletons, but like in the last decade of my hobby, I have never painted 40 of anything.
Yeah,
anything. I painted 20 skeletons for my Soulbite army, and that is the most of one thing that I've painted, I think.
And they're like, having painted a bunch of skeletons myself, it's like it's mostly just bone.
Well, not those fucking ones.
Oh, that's right. They got a bunch of armor and
cloth and shit.
That's probably the same amount of effort. One of those is the same amount as a clan rat.
Yeah.
So that's cool. But the new clan rat sculpts, I fucking love them. So I'm like, I'm gonna be happy because I'm gonna be happy with painting new awesome sculpts, not that big dumbass looking giant ogre thing they came out with. It looks like it was sculpted out of Play-Doh.
Yeah, there's a lot going on that guy.
We'll get into that a whole nother day, but oh my gosh. So I think we solved the issue. We solved the issue of painting and gaming in 2 hours.
Now you know how much to paint for RPGs, board games, and miniature war games. Congratulations.
Yeah, you can thank us by joining the Patreon.
We don't do a whole lot of news, but I did want to bring up something that happened that was interesting. Just one news item, and that is that Steamforged Games has acquired a huge portion of P3.
Yes, they have.
Are you familiar? Yeah. So, like, I don't know if you knew that, but
Privateer Press. P3 is the paint range.
Yes, you're right. By the way, what are the 3?
Privateer Press paint.
Is that what it is? Okay. I believe the paint range also now is Steamforged.
Penises.
This
is the last P.
Triple penises.
It's just P4. We need to market new merch where it just says P4. The back of the shirt, it says the last P is penises.
That's what it says. That is interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. I think the only thing that they didn't get is like this large board game IP that they had developed on the side. But like everything else, War Machine, Hordes, I think it's just one thing now.
It's all under Iron Kingdoms.
Yeah, and I think the paint range, all the models, it's all Steamforged now.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I had a lot of people that messaged me like, John, P3 paint's coming back. John. I'm like, oh, sucky now.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. That you don't see that kind of thing happening in our hobby very often. So I wanted to mention it.
Yeah, that's neat that things aren't just dying, right?
Sure.
There's enough companies that are successful and see value in certain things that it's like, oh, some of the shuffling and that kind of thing, I think is a sign of health. That it's not just like you're worried that anything you liked, it will die forever. Mm-hmm. So like Guild Ball. Speaking of Steamforged.
It's back.
It's back again, baby.
I don't gotta cry anymore. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the XFL. It went away, and it's back again.
What the fuck's the XFL? Like the NFL, but like
Yeah, it was the alternative arena football league that Vince McMahon made for it was like early 2000s.
what was the point of it?
It was just supposed to be faster and more exciting football, but it was just like football players that weren't good enough in the NFL.
Okay, it's like Japan's like baseball league. It's where you go and you can't actually play in the MLB.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there's a soccer or football analogy here.
Yeah, it's called playing in America.
for all of the convoluted league things that are in Europe and the UK.
It is convoluted, but goddamn, do I love how cutthroat soccer is in the UK. Like, if you don't fucking perform, motherfucker, you get relegated, and that is
rough.
I feel like pro teams need that in America just to. Well, I mean, I don't know. They're all like vicious competitors, and they like cry for like 7 days if they don't win. So maybe they don't need to be relegated, but that just adds a level of spice to sports that I think is.
But
cool.
does that league? And I'm sure somebody in the comments will let me know. But like, they have a salary cap
for sport players, like for football players?
Yeah, that league. I don't think they do.
I don't know. Yeah, I imagine that industry is probably so important that probably not.
Because like, I think it was Ronaldo was like the highest paid athlete of all athletes at a time where it's just like LeBron James made $270 million, whatever. He made more. So there's no way. I'm fairly confident there's no salary cap. And this is where the relegation system for a complete outsider feels like complete bullshit, because if you're the big, like, is it, what are the names of some of the big ones? I don't know.
Arsenal.
Sure. Like Manchester United.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Ones like that. Like, they're so big and they have so much money. They're never in worry of being relegated.
No, they're good. Yeah. They have a club of players that are solid. They can buy better ones.
They can buy them.
Yeah.
You're never in the worry. It's always like the fucking underdog.
Yeah. The small village team that fucking is always sucked ass. Yeah.
It's got to be about the same six that are always like, these three of these six are always going to be relegated. 3 of these 6 are always going to be right on the edge, and they just keep flip-flopping.
That'd be interesting.
For a decade.
It's like, okay, every club has $10 million of a budget. How do you want to spend it? It's like every season you have a static amount, and it's like you hire the players you can hire, you try to win, and if you can't win, you get relegated because everyone's on an even playing field. But yeah, if you have just tons of cash,
yeah,
you're good to go.
It's like American baseball. There is no salary cap, so it's the teams that are in the biggest markets that have the biggest payroll that can, and that's not guaranteed championships.
No, it's just higher.
But they're always fucking above 500. They're always good. It's just a matter of if they're great, if the stars align. But anyway, this is not a sports ball talk show radio thing, so we
talk about nerdy shit. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of the podcast. You just missed an incredibly exciting after party, which you would have access to if you gave us your fucking money. Money. If you like the podcast and you want to support it, there are a lot of free ways and non-free ways to support it. If you don't got any dosh to swing out, I don't know why you swing the dosh. I think I was just thinking a different word in my head that also starts with a D and an O.
Ong.
Yeah. You got it. If you don't have any money to spend, you can watch our podcast on YouTube with a whitelisted add-on. We run an ad every 30 minutes. That gives us a couple extra bucks. You can tell your nerd friends about our podcast. Spread the good hobby word. You can give us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We love them 5-star reviews if we've earned it. And if you do have some cash to spend, the podcast is a great place to do that. We've already talked about that in the topic section of the video. But we also have merch down in the description where you can buy cool things like joggers, cups, T-shirts. We have 3 unique Tup designs on the store. They're all very cool. And also a lot of them, or at least 2 of them are fan-made. Just like someone had a vision for a thing about our podcast, and they made like the Tendy Destroyer shirt or the fast food one done by a friend of the show, Ryan. They're just really cool designs. They're fun.
I saw another one that someone posted on the Facebook group of just a black metal trapped under plastic.
Yeah. Love
pretty
that.
Good.
Illegible font.
Yeah. The other thing you can do is you can spread the word about the podcast by going to anywhere in public. There's a lot of people, any public gathering, and then you just scream "trapped under plastic," and then you shotgun a Go-Gurt.
It's like performance art.
Yeah,
it's like a flash mob advertising a thing.
You're just like, "I am a goody pee-pee," scream to the top of your lungs, and then you just tip back your head, put up that Go-Gurt, and
Yeah, actually, I think we're gonna nominate an official day of the year to be Goody PP Day, and at like noon, you all just go out in the high sun and just fucking do that, and then people be like, "What's the deal with PP Day?
What does this have to do with deep throat and go-gurts?"
And the mystery will just get us more viewers. This is the best like social media strategy I've ever heard.
Usually you'd have to pay for these kinds of things. These ideas, it's just
no consultant would have ever come up with that idea. I guarantee that.
Yeah, I mean, but until the next episode, we hope that your paint water is dirty, your go-gurts
are empty,
and your tendies are filled with sauces.
Filled with sauces.
Till then, we'll catch you on the
flippity